Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it.
Amanda was walking back from the market, carrying 2 heavy bags of vegetables. She was completely immersed in her sad thoughts when suddenly she heard someone calling her name. Candy. It had been a long time since she had been called that, and the woman didn't even realize it was her. But she looked around and saw a beautiful, bright brunette looking at her and smiling. Looking closer, Amanda recognized her classmate Ashley. "Hi, Candy," Ashley said hello to Amanda as she came closer. "Hi, Ashley," the tired woman replied with a sigh as she set the bags down on the pavement. "Haven't seen you in ages. How are you?" Ashley asked cheerfully. "Why do you have to carry all that weight yourself? Where's your husband?" "I'm fine. I don't have a husband," Amanda replied, feeling very embarrassed about her appearance in front of her spectacular classmate. Her makeup was flawless, her manicure exquisite, her hair well-groomed. Ashley was glowing with beauty and health, and she, Amanda, with her ponytail, unkempt nails, unhealthy complexion due to constant sleep deprivation and anxiety. It was amazing that Ashley recognized her at all. After all, Amanda had once been very different. Amanda was her parents' only child, and a long-awaited one. When she was born, her mom was 39 and her dad was well into his 40s. Cody and Caroline had given up hope that they might have children, resigned themselves to their fate, and lived for each other. And suddenly, such joy. At a doctor's appointment, Caroline learned she was expecting a baby, and she thought that she started early menopause and dragged to the gynecologist to confirm her assumptions. At home, the woman returned in tears, and Cody at first frightened, thinking that his wife was given some terrible diagnosis. But it turned out that Caroline was crying from happiness, learning that he will soon become a father. Cody also could not hold back a tear. Always restrained and stingy on emotions, a former military man, he cried, so much touched his news about the future baby. His Caroline he took care of and literally carried in his arms until the birth, blowing dust off her. Caroline even laughed at her husband, watching him, a big and strong man, clumsily mopping the floor, ineptly peeling potatoes. The skin of the potato slid off the potato as thin and long shavings, but Cody cut off the skin so that less than half of a large potato was left. He had never done anything in the household before. Everything was on her, but now he had learned everything. And soups, which he initially managed to noticeably oversalted, eventually learned to cook so that Caroline thought tastier. She had never eaten anything in her life. The woman's pregnancy was quite difficult. More than once, there was a threat of miscarriage, and the future parents were very afraid that they would lose the child. But thanks to the efforts of doctors who did everything possible to preserve the pregnancy, Caroline gave birth to a healthy baby girl on time, which was decided to be called Amanda. Caroline, who works in a library, loved the book Evenings at a Farm near Decanka, and especially The Night Before Christmas. So she named her daughter the same name as the heroine of the story, the willful, proud, and beautiful Amanda. With the birth of Amanda, the couple's life was filled with new meaning. They could not put their soul in their little girl. They tried to have the best for their daughter and hoped that fate would allow them to have time to put the girl on her feet, give her an education, and also very much wanted to wait for grandchildren. It was the biggest dream of the parents, to see how their Amanka will become a wife and mother. They are not young. The years are rushing by, adding more and more new diseases. Where can you go from them? Amanda grew up a kind and obedient girl, studied well. Despite the fact that her mother and father adored her, they managed to raise her not spoiled, to instill a love of labor and reading, respect for elders. Outwardly, Amanda was more like her father. Tall, blue-eyed with correct facial features, and from her mother she inherited blonde hair and a charming smile. Young people looked at the pretty girl. Many liked her, but Amanda was in no hurry to open her heart to someone. She wanted to first get an education, a profession, and then already think about creating a family. Graduating from school with a medal and successfully passed the final exams, Amanda entered one of the most prestigious universities in the city on the budget. How happy were Cody and Caroline for her. They were so proud of their blood, who grew up so smart and beautiful. Time passed. Amanda brilliantly graduated from college, got a job, and it would seem live and enjoy. But not so. More and more often her parents began to get sick, especially her father. He was wounded during a business trip to a hotspot, and because of which he had to leave the military service. In age, you can't escape it. Caroline was very worried about her husband, and because of that she often moped and cried furtively while Cody was out of sight, so as not to upset him with her tears. Amanda met Thomas at that time. They worked together, and the girl had long noticed that he was not indifferent to her. She also liked the young man, and that's why, when he once invited her on a date, she didn't refuse. They had a good time, had dinner in a restaurant, took a walk in the evening, fragrant with spring scents in the city. And from that evening they began their romance. Amanda was happy. It seemed to her that she finally met the man with whom she would be able to create a family and experience the happiness of motherhood. Only her parents were more and more worried about her. She was worried about them very much. And once, when Thomas asked her why she did not invite him to her, Amanda said that her father is very sick, and her mother is constantly nervous because of this. The girl was not going to hide anything from her beloved. What's the point? If people love each other and want to be together, they should not hide anything from each other. Lies have no place in a relationship, her mother often told Amanda, and the girl remembered her words well and didn't like lying. Why don't you put your father in a nursing home? Thomas asked, after listening to Amanda. Where to? She said, not immediately able to say. For a moment she was speechless with surprise. Thomas said it so easily, as if it were not about her dear and endlessly loved father, but about some old and unnecessary thing that had to be taken to the dump. To the nursing home, as if nothing had happened, repeated the young man. Do you want to give me the phone number and address? A month ago my parents put my grandmother there. She has dementia, bored everyone with her quirks. By the way, my grandmother's apartment is now mine. I'm going to make repairs there, now just looking for masters. My grandmother's apartment is so filthy that it's scary to even go in there. But after the renovation, we'll be able to live there. So you and I will have our own nest. With these words, Thomas drew Amanda to him and wanted to kiss her, but she pulled away from him. His touch and kisses instantly disgusted her. What are you doing? Thomas exclaimed in surprise. Your parents took your grandmother to a nursing home. Amanda almost screamed. But how could they do that? It's a family member. It's Mom, who gave birth to her, raised her, who loved and cared for her. And now she's old and needs care. How can you get rid of her like an old worn-out shoe? Are you stupid? Thomas looked at Amanda like she was crazy. My grandmother is almost out of her mind. She hardly recognizes my mother, her daughter. And in the nursing home, she'll be taken care of by people who work there and get paid for it. And I need an apartment. How long can I live with my parents? I didn't think you were so hard-hearted. Amanda didn't want to believe what was happening. I would never put my parents in a nursing home. I love them very much, and I will take care of them no matter what happens. And who would want you with all that baggage? Thomas screamed. What normal man would want to marry a woman who has old people sitting on her neck? Your parents are aging rapidly. Your father is a wreck, and they'll be more trouble than they're worth. You need to think about yourself first, about your future. Don't be stupid, Amanda. Shut up, said the girl, who no longer had the will and strength to listen to Thomas. And don't you dare talk badly about my parents. Fuck you, you little brat. You can live with your old people, and I wanted to marry you. Why did I ever get involved with you? With these words, Thomas went quickly to his car, leaving Amanda alone near the cafe from which they had recently left. The girl looked after him. She could hardly believe that 10 minutes ago she had considered this man almost ideal. Amanda returned home, where her mother met her with a smile, informing her that her father was better today, and they even went for a walk in the park. It's been so long since Cody and I have been out, Caroline sighed. It was so nice to walk, to get some fresh air. We fed the ducks in the pond. My mood improved immediately. Dad is asleep now, and I took out a box of yarn. I'm thinking about making a sweater for Cody, a warm one. I'll start slowly and I'll be done by winter. It'll take my mind off my worries. Knitting calms me down. Good. Amanda was happy for her parents. Sure, knit your dad a sweater. He'll be happy. Do you want to have dinner? Daddy and I already ate. No, Mommy, thanks. I'm not hungry. I had a snack at the cafe. Oh yeah, you've been seeing Thomas. How's the relationship going? Has he proposed yet? I'd like to meet your boyfriend. Thomas and I broke up, Amanda said. What? Mom shook her hands. You said yesterday that you were serious. What happened, daughter? Did he hurt you in some way? He did, Mom. And let's not talk about him anymore, the girl said. She could not tell her mother what she and Thomas had quarreled about. Amanda couldn't get his cruel words out of her head. I can't believe she would suggest such a thing, putting her father in a nursing home. He talked about his grandmother as if she were a stranger. He was only glad that she was put in a boarding school because now he had his own apartment. And all this was told to her by Thomas, the man she had almost managed to love, whom she saw as a future husband and father of her children. It was probably for the best that she'd brought up her parents today and Thomas had reacted that way. She'd been able to see him from a whole new side, and it had been a very unpleasant one. But it was better than if she had become his wife, and then he would have brought up the fact that her parents belonged in a boarding school. The next day, when Amanda arrived at work, Thomas approached her and said a discreet hello. Amanda nodded back, letting him know that they had nothing to talk about. However, the young man asked, "Did you take offense at me a lot for what happened yesterday?" "I wasn't offended," the girl replied. "I was disappointed. I overreacted yesterday. I lost my temper. I'm sorry. Let's talk calmly now." "About what, Thomas?" "Yesterday you told me everything, and I heard you and realized that we have completely different views on life." "Amanda, realize that you're a young woman, you have a life to live, and you've got aging parents on your hands." "Thomas, stop it. My parents are not senile. Yes, my dad is often sick, but he's in his right mind, and my mom's still pretty good, but she's worried about my dad because they can't do without each other. 45 years together, they are like a whole. They are an example for me. I would also like to live with my husband like them, and I love them very much. They are wonderful parents. I had a happy childhood. I'm grateful to my mom and dad for everything. What you did with your grandmother is your choice, but I don't need to impose it on you. Well, let's say your parents are still holding on, but what about 10 years from now, or even 5 years from now?" Thomas was not satisfied. "You see, Amanda, I like you very much, very much. I'd love to marry you. But when I imagine that you will spend your time not with me, but with your old people, and if they are lying down or have problems with their heads, like my grandmother, what then?" "Thomas, then I have a question for you too. What if we get married and I suddenly get seriously ill? What would you do? Leave me? And if I have a sick child, will you leave me too? Because you'll think it's a burden." "What nonsense are you talking about?" exclaimed the young man. "Why should you get sick? You are young, healthy, full of vigor. I am young and healthy too, and we can't have a sick child. Why go to extremes?" "They are not extremes, Thomas. Life is unpredictable, and we are not immune to anything. Absolutely nothing. Today you're young and healthy. Tomorrow something could happen. And our conversation yesterday made it clear to me that you're unreliable, that you can't be relied on in case of any trouble. You're exaggerating. You don't have to make a monster out of me." "I'm not. I'm just saying what I think. We can't be together. We have different views on things that are very important to me. So let's put an end to our relationship. There's no future for us. With such principles, you'll be alone," Thomas said unhappily. "That's none of your business," Amanda replied and went to her office. There was no point in continuing the conversation with her former boyfriend. Thomas made no further attempts to get Amanda back, and after a couple of weeks he started courting Katia, who had joined their company a month ago and was actively making eyes at the young man. Amanda didn't care. They often had heart-to-heart talks, and perhaps only with her could the young woman share her worries and anxieties. Amanda rarely saw her friends, and lately she had stopped seeing them altogether. They had families, children, their own affairs and worries, and Amanda, with her endless problems and difficulties, was generally not interesting to them. She'd understood this well, so she did not seek to communicate, not being in the habit of imposing. But with Violetta, she immediately established a trusting relationship, and it can be said that they became friends. "I too took care of my parents myself until they died," the shopkeeper once said, "but it was much easier for me. My husband helped me well, my children, they loved their grandparents very much, and I have a sister. It's hard for you alone, of course. I wish you had a good husband, Amanda, to help and support you. You're a kind and good girl. You deserve to be happy. I wish I had a son, only a daughter. I would introduce you to my son. I can only dream of having a daughter-in-law like you. Thank you, Violetta, for your kind words. But where to find such a husband? My ex-husband, Thomas, told me that no one needs someone like me with the baggage of elderly parents, and he suggested that I put my father in a nursing home. I love my parents, but I realize that it's unlikely that anyone will need me with my problems. But I can't put my parents in a nursing home. It's very cruel. I'm a fool. This Thomas. He's an idiot, that Thomas, exclaimed Violetta. Don't judge everyone by him. You know, there are plenty of fools in the world, but there are also a lot of good people. Believe me, I've lived twice as long as you. And you know that fate will thank you for your kind heart. Amanda had a day off and decided to go to the market to buy vegetables. Vegetables at the market were cheaper than in the stores, and the young woman now had to save money. After quitting her job, where she had been earning a decent salary, money was tight, and she had to spend a lot of money on medicines and all kinds of examinations for her parents. Her feelings for Thomas were instantly burned out, so strong was her disappointment in him. And when 6 months later, Thomas and Catherine announced to their colleagues that they were getting married, Amanda's heart did not flinch. She also received an invitation to the wedding. The future newlyweds decided to organize a celebration with a bang and invited the entire team. Amanda did not go to the wedding to her former boyfriend, deciding that she had nothing to do there, and there was no desire. However, Thomas, once bumped into Amanda in the office corridor, stopped her by taking her hand and asked, "Do not regret it? It could have been you in Catherine's place." "There was nothing to regret," the girl replied, releasing his hand and hurrying into his office. Time passed. Cody was getting sick more and more often. He was often in the hospital and had 2 surgeries. Amanda and Caroline did everything to keep him healthy, but Mom's health was failing her too, and the worries were endless. "Daughter, I'm so afraid that Daddy will leave us," she shared with Amanda. "I can't do without him. We've been together for so many years. We've become one. We've been through so much. His service is not easy, dangerous missions. When he was wounded, I thought I would go crazy. I prayed day and night for his health. We had no one. My parents left early. They were frontline soldiers, all wounded. And my mom had a short fate. I didn't even remember my father. He left us. So your father and I lived for each other. And then fate gave us such a gift. We had you. It's a miracle. It's a pity it happened so late. If only it had happened sooner, when we were younger." "Mommy," Amanda hugged her mom. "It was the right thing to do. Everything has its time." "You're right, daughter," Caroline smiled. "I used to write a little poetry when I was young, and now I remembered one. Would you like to read it?" "Sure." "Well, listen, but don't judge me harshly. It's a good poem, Mom, so let's not be sad." Amanda was 32 when Cody went down with the disease. The man was almost 80, and the doctor said there was no chance of his recovery. "What do you want? Girl age?" the doctor told Amanda. "It's surprising that he lived to such an age after a serious injury. So be brave, be strong." But Cody didn't have long to live. At most 6 months, but most likely he won't live even that. Amanda understood, but still the thought of her daddy's passing made her mopey. It was painful to watch her mom too. She spent most days at her husband's bedside, not eating much, saying she had no appetite. Amanda had to feed her almost from a spoon, constantly coaxing her to eat. It is not for nothing they say that trouble does not come alone. Amanda's life was going downhill. Quite unexpectedly, she was fired from her job. The young woman was being downsized, but she was not surprised that the choice fell on her. In the chair of the boss for a year has sat Thomas, and it explained a lot. And "Ashley, everyone has problems, I guess. I have plenty, but why do you need to know about them? It's okay, I can handle it. I'm sorry, but I really have to go." "Amanda, wait, give me your phone number," said a classmate. "Maybe we could call and get together sometime when you have time." "I'm afraid I won't have time soon," Amanda replied, but still dictated her phone number. "Why were you so adamant about not going to the class reunion?" Violetta wondered when Amanda told her about the meeting with Ashley. "Don't you want to see the people you've been in the same class with for so many years? We get together every year. Not the whole class, of course, but whoever can definitely comes. It's always such a positive charge for me. We had a friendly class and years later we are still friends. No, really, why do you refuse? On the contrary, I go out, have some fun, relax. I'm not in the mood to go out and have fun. And what am I going to wear? I have only office suits in my closet, which I wore to work, and jeans and t-shirts. I haven't bought a dress in so long, and I don't want to spend money now for one evening. I'm not talking about hair and manicure, and I have to pay for the restaurant, and you know I don't have extra money. No, I'm not going anywhere. Well, my dear, don't think sad thoughts. Violetta almost commanded, which made Amanda smile. I was just about to give you a bonus for good work, so you have money for the restaurant. And as for the dress and hair, it's no problem at all. I have an older daughter who's a hairdresser at a beauty parlor. She will put your hair in order and make a hairstyle that everyone will fall. And she can do manicures and makeup too. And my youngest is skinny like you and has tons of dresses. We'll find something for you. Violetta. Amanda was confused, not knowing what to say. On the one hand, going to a class reunion wouldn't be a bad idea. She hadn't been anywhere for so long. From work, rushing home to her parents. But on the other hand, could she accept what the shopkeeper was offering her? Although she had no doubt that Violetta was offering her help from the bottom of her heart. Amanda, no objections or refusals. And if you're afraid to leave your parents alone, I can stay with you while you're at the restaurant with your classmates. It is not difficult for me, and I have a lot of experience in caring for the elderly, I told you. You should definitely go to this meeting. Understand that you have to go out sometimes, meet people, have a rest. Give yourself a chance to get away from your worries and problems. Otherwise, my dear, you can mope and even get sick. All right, Amanda agreed uncertainly. Thank you very much. That's good. The day after tomorrow, when you have the day off, I'll introduce you to my girls. We'll pick out a dress for you two. Everything will be fine. Amanda, you'll see. Violet hugged Amanda, who wanted to believe that everything would be fine. That same day, Ashley called Amanda. I can't get our meeting out of my head, Candy. I feel like you're in a lot of trouble. And you know, if you don't want to go to the meeting because you don't have the finances, that's not a problem. I'll talk to our people. We'll put up the money for you. I'd really like to get the whole class together. We'd invited some of the teachers too. They promised to be there. Our teacher's gonna be there. It's a good thing you called Ashley, because I gave you my number and didn't ask for yours. You know, I'm still going to the class reunion and I have the money. Just tell me when and where it is. Great. The classmate was happy. I'll give you all the information in Messenger. If anything, call me. I'll see you later. After talking to Ashley, Amanda decided to tell her mom that she was going to the class reunion. Daughter, of course you should go, her mom encouraged. You're always around us old people. You don't go anywhere. You don't meet your friends. And you're a young woman. You need to organize your personal life. We've worn you out. Having said that, Caroline cried. Lately, the woman had been crying a lot, which upset Amanda, who found it hard to see her mother's tears. Don't say that, Mommy, Amanda said, hugging her mom. You know how much I love you and Daddy. I know, my dear, I know. Thank you very much for everything. You are our late, long-awaited happiness, but I don't want you to miss your happiness because of us. So make sure you go to a restaurant, socialize with your classmates and teachers. On her day off, Amanda arrived at Violetta's house as arranged. Violetta's daughters, Amelia and Katie, were already there. They turned out to be very pleasant young women, as friendly and sociable as their mother. The sisters were quite different in appearance. The younger Amelia was very much like her mother, both in face and figure. She was as thin and tall. Daria, on the other hand, was small in stature, chubby and round-faced, but she was very charming, with a warm smile and dimples on her cheeks. She looks like her father, Amanda said, glancing at the family portrait framed on the coffee table in the living room where they were gathered. Violetta said cheerfully as she went into the kitchen. Amanda sincerely admired this woman, the owner of the store where she worked for the third month. Violetta was incredibly energetic, smiling and friendly. She never seemed to be in a bad mood. Now Amanda was even glad that Thomas had fired her. Of course, she had lost her salary and had to work outside her specialty, but fate had given her a chance to meet such a wonderful person as Violetta. And now her daughters. It's so precious when you meet kind and sincere people. Amanda, I brought some dresses for you to try on and choose. With these words, Amelia took the dresses out of a big bag and spread them on the couch. Here, choose whichever one you like best, but it is better to try on all of them. See which one will sit on you perfectly. Although with a figure like yours, you can afford any outfit. I think you'd look good even in a sack. You said a sack, laughed Katie. Come on, Amanka, try on the outfits and we'll vote for the best one. When Violetta entered the living room with a tray in her hands, Amanda was standing in front of the mirror in a soft blue dress that suited her incredibly well. How beautiful! Violetta exclaimed, placing the tray on the table. I think it's exactly what you need. It's just the right dress for you. Forgive me for saying so, Amelia, but I think you'll agree with me. Of course I do, Amelia smiled. Amanda, Mom's right. That dress looks great on you. And by the way, it's lucky. It's the dress I wore the day I met my husband. And you know what? Let me give it to you. I'm sure it'll bring you luck too. No, you don't have to. Amanda tried to refuse, although she liked the dress very much. When she put it on and looked at herself in the mirror, she felt as if she had been born in that dress. If you refuse, I will be offended, said Amelia. I have a lot of dresses, half of which I haven't worn for a long time, so take it, it's yours. Thank you, Amelia, thanked Amanda. She looked at herself in the mirror and couldn't get enough of it. It had been so long since she had seen herself in a dress, and even so beautiful. What a difference a dress makes to a woman, Katie remarked. It makes her more feminine and attractive. Amanda, let your hair down. I want to see what kind of haircut I can give you. Amanda pulled down the elastic band she had used to pull her long hair into a ponytail and turned to Katie. It's nice and thick, Daria said, giving Amanda's hair a professional look, but it's dull and the ends are frayed. That's okay, I'll work on your hair and fix it up. Can you come to my salon tomorrow? Violetta said for Amanda. She had tomorrow off too. And now that we've decided on the dress, let's drink tea, girls. I made my first lemon muffin today and I can't wait to see what I make. Mom, I'm never going to lose weight like this, Katie sighed. But how could I refuse your cupcake? It looks delicious. Of course you can't, laughed Violetta. Dig in, girls, or Katie's going to eat the whole cupcake by herself. Amanda felt so good and cozy in this company that for a while she forgot about all her cares, problems, and worries. She thought about how strange life was, and on the contrary, the one whom you thought to be your own person, whom you trusted, could betray you or stab you in the back when you least expected it. Like she did with Thomas. She was ready to commit her life to him, and he turned out to be so unreliable, petty. And even years later, he reminded her that she didn't want to be with him, firing her from her job at the most difficult time of her life. What are you thinking about, Amanda? Violet asked. Oh, nothing. It's nice to be with you, cozy. Thank you so much for the tea, the companionship, and everything you do for me. I don't even know how to thank you. Come on, Violetta said. Do we expect any gratitude? Although, for me personally, the best gratitude is to see your eyes shine. With happiness, of course. Shall I pour you some more tea? No. Thank you, Violetta. I have to go now. Daddy needs an injection soon, and Mom can't do it herself lately. Her hands shake sometimes. I have to go too. I'll give you a ride, Amelia said. Don't forget I'm expecting you at my salon tomorrow, Katie reminded her. Come by at 1 o'clock and we'll have lunch together. We have a cafeteria nearby. Everything is delicious and the prices are reasonable. Amanda smiled and looked at Violetta, who smiled approvingly back at her. As she walked out of the entryway, Amanda suddenly bumped into Thomas. She had no desire to say hello to him, so she preferred to just walk past him. But the man blocked her way and smiled broadly and asked, How are you doing, Amanda? Did you find a job? Imagine that I did. And it's a good one. And the best part is, you're not there. Let me through. Please, Thomas grinned, stepping aside. Maybe you got married too. Maybe I did. It's none of your business. Good luck. Do you know him? Amelia asked Amanda when they got in the car. I do. Do you know him too? I've seen him a few times. He's my parents' neighbor. I know that there used to be an old woman living in the apartment where he lives. Then they put her in an orphanage and he took the apartment. His grandson, I guess. Yes, grandson, Amanda said, and my ex-boyfriend. I never thought I'd meet him when I went to see Violetta. Small world. I take it you two had a bad breakup, Amelia asked. Badly. And while they were driving, Amanda told Emily about Thomas, including the fact that it was because of him that she was unemployed. What a bastard. Amelia was outraged. But you know, all his meanness will come back to him one day. Amanda returned home in a very good mood, and even meeting Thomas hadn't spoiled it. Amanda had no feelings for this man for a long time, but it was hard for her to understand that a man could be so mean and vindictive. If he took revenge on her for breaking up a short relationship with him, it was scary to imagine how he would take revenge on his ex-wife Catherine for leaving him for another man. Amanda knew that after the divorce, Catherine got married almost immediately and moved to another city with her husband. Perhaps it was a coincidence, or perhaps it was because they didn't want to stay in the same town as Thomas. Somehow Amanda felt that it was his fault that his wife had left him. Thomas was clearly a rotten man, though he knew how to make a good impression. She'd been charmed by him at first, but she'd seen his true colors in time. But stop thinking and thinking about him, Amanda told herself. That man wasn't worth her time and thoughts. Dad was feeling pretty good today. As good as one could feel in his condition. That's why Mom was cheerful too. When Amanda entered the room where her father was lying, Caroline was sitting next to him with a book in her hands, reading him something from the classics. She often read books to her husband, and he loved to listen to her voice, so familiar and soothing. Seeing her daughter, her mother put aside the book and asked, "Is it time for the injection?" And Dad seemed to have fallen asleep. "I'm not asleep," answered the father, without opening his eyes. "Give me your shot. I'm sick of them." "What's the use of them?" "Daddy, don't grumble. If the doctor ordered it, we'll do it," Amanda said affectionately, pulling out of a large box everything necessary for the injection. "Now I think I'm actually going to sleep," Daddy said after the injection. "Get some sleep, Cody," Caroline replied, carefully adjusting the blanket. "I'm going to lie down too. I'll lie down for half an hour, and then I'll make dinner. What would you like to eat, Cody?" "Galaka, I don't care. You know I'm not picky. I don't have an appetite anyway. I'm eating through force." "Oh, I remember my kid years. I was always hungry. I couldn't eat enough in the canteen. And now I ate 2 spoonfuls and I'm full. That's what old age and illness do to us. I can't wait to get back to my parents. They must be waiting for me. I can't torture you much longer." "Dad, don't say that. You're upsetting Mom with your words. And me too." "Okay, daughter, I'm sorry about the grumpy old man." Amanda kissed her father on his wrinkled, prickly cheek and led her mother into the living room, which was now their common room. When her father finally went down, Amanda gave him her small room and moved into her mother's larger room. She decided that it would be better. A seriously ill person should have a separate room. Although Caroline insisted to the last to live in the same room with her husband, but Amanda realized that then her mother would not sleep and rest at all, and in the end would drive herself to sleep. And who would be better off? Amanda covered her with a soft blanket and went to the kitchen to prepare a light supper. Having managed in the kitchen, the young woman decided to try on the dress again, this time with shoes. She let her hair down and twirled around in front of the large mirror in the hallway. And at that moment, her cell phone rang in her purse. The number was no longer in her phone book, but Amanda remembered it by heart. It was Thomas. What more did he want from her? After hesitating for a while, Amanda answered the phone. "Hello again," said the familiar voice she didn't want to hear. "What do you want, Thomas?" Amanda asked. "Why won't you leave me alone? It's just not working out. I saw you today and I can't forget you. Why are you so ingrained in my memory and in my soul? Did you cast a spell on me?" Amanda thought Thomas' voice sounded a little strange. Slurred. "Are you drunk?" she guessed. "I'm entitled to a little relaxation after a hard day's work," the man replied. "Do you think it's easy to sit in the boss's chair?" "I have no idea. I have never sat in this chair. And before you did not drink at all. Are you going to tell me off?" "No, I don't care if you're drunk or sober. I just don't understand why you're calling me. I've been doing some research on you. You're a saleswoman." Thomas laughed, and his laughter gave Amanda an unpleasant sting. "Isn't that creepy? You have a red diploma. Where I work is none of your business, and I like my job." Oh, how rude we are. I mean, I'm ready to forgive you and take you back, but on one condition. I don't need your forgiveness. Amanda's patience was almost breaking and she was getting angry, especially since I'm not guilty of anything in front of you. You left me and I loved you, you fool. I loved you. Do you understand? I didn't love Katia. I started seeing her to spite you. I thought you'd get jealous and want me back, but you traded me for those old people who belong in an almshouse. Shut up, Amanda said rudely, which was not her usual way, but she couldn't listen to Thomas's nonsense any longer. You didn't love me because a man like you can't love anyone but yourself. I just hurt your feelings, that's all. That's why you get mad and take your anger out on me. I'm never coming back to you or to work while you're there. And don't ever call me again. Forget my number and forgive me too. Saying that, Amanda disconnected and immediately blacklisted Thomas' number. Why did he call? Such a nice day today, and he ruined it with his drunken ramblings. Why are you yelling like that, daughter? Caroline asked, looking out into the hallway. What happened? Who called? They offered me a loan. They'd had enough. I'm sorry, Mommy. Did I wake you up? No, I was awake. I fell asleep for about 10 minutes and woke up. Are you going somewhere? That's a beautiful dress. I told you about the class reunion, so I'm trying it on. Do you like it? I love it. You're so beautiful in that dress, just like a movie star. It's good that you bought yourself a dress. You were always wearing jeans and sneakers. The dress was given to me, Mommy. Amanda smiled and told Caroline about the time she had spent with Violetta today. What nice people. God bless them, said Mommy. Our world would have collapsed long ago, drowned in anger, if there were no such kind and sympathetic people. It's a pity that not everyone is like that. There are a lot of scoundrels too. Yes, it's a pity. Amanda agreed with her mother, remembering her conversation with Thomas. Go show your dad if he's awake. Let him see how beautiful you are. The day of the class reunion came. Amanda had been nervous all morning. Her father had taken a turn for the worse today, and Amanda wondered whether she should go to the meeting at all. She was anxious, and the young woman was afraid that something would happen in her absence, and her mother would be confused. But her mother, realizing how much her daughter wanted to go to the meeting, calmed Amanda, assuring her that everything would be all right. Amanda remembered that Violetta offered her to stay with her parents while she was at the party, but Amanda did not dare to take advantage of this offer because she was afraid of abusing Violetta's kind attitude towards her. However, the store owner herself called Amanda and asked if she needed help. When she heard that Cody had taken a turn for the worse, the woman said, "Okay, Amanda, don't panic too soon, and don't give up on the party. You deserve it. Dashka and I will be here today to help you get ready. Kitty will make you up, and I'll stay with you to make sure you and your mom are comfortable. We've already met Caroline, so give her a heads up. We'll have a heart-to-heart. We'll have tea. She wanted to show me the family album last time, so we'll see. I can't thank you enough, Violetta. You do so much for me. Amanda, we've been over this. You don't need to thank me. Just be happy. You know, I'm a happy person. I've been blessed with a lot of good things in life, and I just want everyone around me to be happy. Of course, it's impossible, but if I can do anything for the happiness of a good person, I'll do it. That's my nature, and I brought up my daughters that way. You have to help people if you can help them. Yes, your daughters are wonderful. Thank you." At 6 o'clock in the evening, beautiful and dressed up Amanda got into a cab and went to the restaurant to meet her classmates. She felt anxious, but it wasn't anxiety for her parents, who stayed at home under Violetta's watchful eye. Amanda was worried because she hadn't seen her classmates and teachers for a long time, some since the day they graduated from high school. It was a pleasant excitement, the anticipation of a joyous reunion. "Are you going to some kind of celebration?" Amanda was asked by the cab driver, a nice gray-haired man who was also very talkative. "Yes, a class reunion." "When did you graduate from high school, dear young lady?" "About 5 years ago, maybe." "No, it's been 15 years. Wow, I thought you were as old as my daughter, but she just turned 25. You look great." "Thank you," Amanda smiled, thinking to herself that the cab driver was exaggerating, but she was still incredibly pleased. Katie was a real professional after all. She was a professional. She was magic. Amanda didn't recognize herself in the mirror today when Violetta's eldest daughter did her makeup and beautifully styled her hair. Caroline cried when she saw her daughter. "How beautiful you are," said the old woman, admiring her little girl. "She is not only beautiful, but also very clever," Violetta praised Amanda. "That's true, but I want her to be happy too. She will be Carolina, don't doubt it," Violetta said confidently. "And this dress, by the way, is a happy one. Maya Rinka met her destiny in it. May Amanda be lucky too." "Oh, God willing, I pray for it every day," Caroline sighed, wiping away her tears. "If my daughter met a good man, then I could die in peace." "What are you talking about?" Violetta hugged Amanda's mom. "You don't need to hurry to the other world. Live a long time, you still have grandchildren to wait for." "Grandchildren are such a blessing. I have 3. I love those little rascals." Amanda got out of the cab and headed towards the restaurant building. On the porch stood several people in whom the woman recognized her classmates. They all looked in her direction, and Vidya Smirnov exclaimed enthusiastically, "Wow, Candy, is that you? That's someone I haven't seen since graduation." "That's me," Amanda smiled. "Hi, everybody, nice to see you." "Hello, hello," the rest of the class responded. "What are you guys doing stuck in here?" Ashley asked, looking out the door of the restaurant. "Let's go to the auditorium. Everyone's waiting." "Oh, Candy, hi. You look great." "Thanks, Ashley," Amanda replied, remembering her recent encounter with Ashley when her classmate had probably been surprised by her unattractive appearance. It was strange that she recognized her at all. Amanda couldn't believe that she was the tired, bruised woman who looked several years older than her age. Today, she saw herself as a beautiful and young woman again. Almost the whole class and several teachers, including Valentina Arkadyevna, the class teacher of their former 11th A class, were gathered around the tables filled with food and drinks. The woman was already retired, but continued to work, could not think of herself without her favorite school and her students. "How glad I am to see you all, my dear children," said Debbie, who was the first to be given the floor. "Of course, you have grown up long ago and many of you have children of your own. But I look at you now and again I see those mischievous and funny 5th graders you were more than 20 years ago. I am happy that all of you have grown up to be worthy people, found your own way, on which you are now going towards your dreams and goals. Do not be afraid to set new goals and achieve them. Do not be afraid to dream, even about what seems unrealizable. You will succeed. And remember, whatever happens, you can always turn to me for advice or help, my dear students, my favorite children." After saying these touching words, the old teacher cried, and some of her former students, including Amanda, could not hold back their tears either. The reunion turned out to be very warm, heartfelt, and fun. The invited host prepared an exciting program. There were a lot of contests and games, a lot of dancing, and of course, a lot of conversations and memories. The former classmates had a lot to remember and talk about. Amanda was happy that she went to the reunion. It had been a long time since she had gotten such a lot of positive emotions in one evening. In the middle of the party, Amanda went outside to call Violetta to see if everything was all right at home. Despite the wonderful fun evening, Amanda was still uneasy. "All is well with us, Amanda. Have fun and don't worry. Cody had dinner and went to sleep, and your mom and I are having tea and looking at pictures. She tells us so interestingly about everything. Wonderful woman, your mom." After talking to Violetta, Amanda decided to stay outside a little longer. It was stuffy in the banquet hall and she wanted to get some fresh air. She thought about it and did not immediately notice that a strange man stopped next to her. "Good evening, dear girl," he said, and Amanda flinched in surprise. "Hello," she replied, glancing at the stranger. He looked to be about 35 years old, tall, handsome. "Excuse me, I saw you in the restaurant and was struck by your beauty. Perhaps I'm saying banal things now, but it's true. I liked you very much. May I ask your name?" "Ah, Amanda." "Amanda," repeated the man. "That's a beautiful name. And I'm Jacob. Nice to meet you, Jacob. I want to tell you right away that I'm single and my heart is free. Although I'm not so sure about that now. I look at you and realize more and more that this is the kind of girl I've always dreamed of. You don't know me at all. But what if I'm married?" Amanda looked at Jacob and realized that the man didn't seem impudent or pushy, although he was acting a little assertive. "Are you married?" Jacob asked, and Amanda saw a slight change in his face. "No," she said. "Oh, that's a relief," he exclaimed and smiled. "But that doesn't mean anything. I'm not in the mood for dating," said Amanda, who now thought about her parents and what Thomas had said to her. No man would want to be with her while she was taking care of her elderly parents. These words were like sharp needles in her soul and prevented her from believing that she would be able to find happiness as a woman someday. And she has no time to think about her personal life. The young woman suddenly felt like Cinderella, whose carriage after midnight will turn into a pumpkin, an incredibly beautiful dress into rags. Today, on this holiday, she feels like a princess, but tomorrow she will return to her life, filled with endless worries and problems. "Did someone hurt you?" Jacob asked. "Just say the word, and I'll teach your abuser a lesson." "No one has wronged me." "Thank you for your kind words, Jacob, but I'm going to go to mine." "It's your class reunion today, isn't it?" "Yeah, 15 years since I graduated high school." "Wow, you look like you graduated about 5 years ago." "You're not the first person to tell me that today," Amanda smiled, remembering the cab driver's words. "Amanda, can I ask for your phone number? I won't forgive myself if a girl I like so much takes off and disappears." Amanda thought for a moment, then dictated her number to Jacob and returned to the restaurant, where her classmates engaged her in another fun contest. She was sure the man wouldn't call her, and if he did, it wouldn't oblige her to do anything. But for some reason she felt both happy and sad at the same time. Amanda returned home at midnight, even though her classmates were still partying. She felt awkward in front of Violetta, even though she had told Amanda not to worry and to stay at the meeting as long as she wanted. When she got home, she took off her shoes with pleasure. It had been so long since she had worn heeled shoes that she felt a noticeable fatigue in her feet. Violetta met her in the hallway. "Amanda, your parents are asleep." "It's okay," she whispered. "How did you have a good time yourself?" "I had a great time." "Thank you so much, Violetta." "You're welcome. It was my pleasure. I'll see you at work on Monday and you can tell me all about it, okay?" "Sure. Okay, I'm going home. Get some rest." Amanda closed the door behind Violetta, took a shower, and gladly crawled under the covers. But she couldn't fall asleep quickly. She thought back to the pleasant events of the previous evening, and her heart filled with warmth and hope. Amanda thought about Jacob. She liked the man and she thought she would like to see him again. But would he want to talk to her after hearing about her complicated life? That beautiful girl from the restaurant and the real Amanda are very different from each other. With these thoughts, the young woman fell into a dream. In the morning, barely awake, she heard the signal of her cell phone. From an unknown number, and one of the messengers she received a postcard wishing her a good morning and a good day. And then there was a message. "Dear Amanda, please write at what time it will be convenient for you to talk. I look forward to hearing from you. Jacob." Amanda smiled, looked at her watch, and told the man that he could call her in an hour. She was going to go to the market for vegetables, and she would be able to talk to Jacob on the way there. Amanda washed her face and went to the kitchen to make breakfast. But there was already a stack of pancakes on the kitchen table and a pot of millet porridge on the stove. "Good morning, daughter." Caroline smiled. "I haven't slept since 5 o'clock this morning, and I thought, what's the use of lying in bed when I can bake pancakes and boil porridge? Sit down to breakfast." "Thanks, Mommy. How are you feeling?" "How's Daddy?" "I fed Daddy, gave him all his medicine. He seems to be doing better. He slept well, and I'm fine. My blood pressure's fine." "How was your time last night? Tell me about it. I was waiting for you, but then I fell asleep." "Thanks a lot to Violetta for keeping me company. What a wonderful woman she is." Amanda told her mother about last night, about her classmates and teachers, about the fun games and contests. She didn't tell her mom about meeting Jacob. She knew how much Caroline wanted her daughter to meet a good man, a real man, but it was too soon to tell her mother about it. One brief meeting and a couple of compliments didn't tell her anything. Amanda decided to talk to Jacob on the phone during her trip to the market so that her mother wouldn't overhear her conversation. Amanda put her hair in a ponytail, put on jeans and comfortable sneakers, and went to the market. No sooner had she left the house than her cell phone rang. Amanda pulled the phone out of her bag and smiled. Jacob called exactly 1 hour later, minute to minute. It was as if he had been sitting there waiting for the moment to make the call. Barely waited for the opportunity to hear your voice again, Amanda, the man said. They talked for 20 minutes. The entire time Amanda walked leisurely to the market. She deliberately took her time. She was interested in talking to this man. But then she said, Jacob, I can't talk anymore for now. Let's call later. Amanda, I'm sorry to ask. Where are you located? I hear there's a lot of noise around you. I'm at the market for vegetables, as Amanda said. For vegetables? Jacob asked. You must be loaded. Do you have someone to help you, or are you going to do the heavy lifting yourself? I don't have help, but it's okay. I'm used to it. No, Amanda. I'm sorry, but this isn't right. A fragile girl shouldn't be carrying heavy bags. Okay, here's the deal. Tell me where the market is, and I'll come by car to take you home and help you with the bags. No, Jacob, Amanda exclaimed, a little startled by the surprise. It's completely unnecessary. I can do it myself. It's not unnecessary, it's normal. And besides, I really want to see you. Let's combine the two. What's the address? And Amanda dictated the address. Great, the man was pleased. It's not too far from my house. I'll be there soon. I'll call you when I get there. The young woman paused in confusion, then thought it might be for the best. Let Jacob see her as she really was. Unmade, plainly dressed. Maybe he wouldn't recognize her at all, and she'd tell him about her parents right away. Let her know everything from the beginning. And this will probably be the last time they meet. But it wouldn't hurt her. She wouldn't have time to get used to him, wouldn't have time to fall in love with him. And she could fall in love with this man. She liked Jacob. In the meantime, since he'd offered to help, she could get more vegetables to last her a while. It's not exactly a pleasure to carry heavy bags. Not for a frail woman. Jacob was absolutely right. 15 minutes later, the man called Amanda and told her he'd left his car in the parking lot and was on his way to the market to help her. Not even yesterday, when she had driven to a classmate reunion, had she been this excited. She imagined the disappointed look on Volodya's face when he saw her, but it was different. Jacob recognized her immediately, smiled, and immediately took the heavy bags from her hands. Is there anything else you want? He asked. Let's go with you, agreed? I'm in. I'd like to buy some more fruit and greens. Okay, the man nodded and then asked, You've got so much, obviously not for yourself, right? I live with my parents, Amanda replied. They're elderly, my dad is lying down, and my mom's health is failing. I see, Jacob nodded. Let's go get some fruit, shall we? So you live with your parents and take care of them? Jacob asked as he and Amanda got into the car. Yes, I'm the only late child in the family, and my mom and dad never thought they'd have children, and then I was born. That's great, Jacob said after a moment's thought. You have parents. It's such a blessing. Amanda looked at Jacob in surprise. Of course, she had not expected him, like Thomas, to immediately suggest that she put her parents in a boarding school, but she had not expected him to be as happy as if he had heard about her situation. I don't have parents, Jacob sighed sadly, starting the car. My dad died before I was 2, so I don't even remember him. My mom had a heart condition, and the doctors wouldn't even let her give birth, but she took the risk, and still she was gone when I was 7 years old. She managed to take me to school, to the 1st grade, and a month later she died. My aunt, my mother's sister, raised me. I'm grateful to her, of course, although our relationship was not very good. I was difficult, I was a hooligan. I was always in contact with bad companies. Aunt Rita had a hard time with me, but still did not give me to the orphanage. And then it still took up my mind. After school, I went to the army. There I finally got my brains in place. My goals in life appeared. I got a profession, graduated from the institute by correspondence. But I didn't have a family. I was married, but it didn't work out. We separated. So, Amanda, having a mom and dad is such a blessing. Will you introduce me to your parents sometime? You really like to meet them? Of course I would. I'm very serious about you, Amanda. Don't think I'm throwing words around. I don't. It's just that this is all happening so fast. We just met yesterday. Let's not rush things, okay? Let's not, but I'm pretty sure you're the woman I want. And by the way, I like you as much today as I did yesterday. I was afraid you wouldn't recognize me at all today, Amanda smiled, and that you'd be disappointed when you did. No, on the contrary. Yesterday you were dazzlingly beautiful, and I was afraid you wouldn't want to talk to me. I was afraid you'd be arrogant, but you're very kind and sincere, and these are the most important qualities in people for me." The car ride to Amanda's house took less than 5 minutes. Jacob took the bags into the apartment and was about to leave when Caroline came into the hallway, and Amanda had to introduce him to her mom. She introduced him as an acquaintance who had kindly offered to help, but Mom immediately guessed that this was no longer just an acquaintance. It's been a year and a half. Let's find out what has changed in the lives of our heroes during this time. I think that my dear readers have already guessed that the dress in which Amanda went to the meeting of classmates, and indeed, turned out to be happy. Maybe it wasn't the dress at all, but that night our main character met her destiny. Their relationship with Jacob developed very quickly. He turned out to be a good and reliable man, able to love and take care of his beloved woman. And Amanda's heart also opened towards this love. Cody had time to rejoice for his daughter, who found her feminine happiness, and soon he was gone. Caroline had a hard time with the death of her beloved husband, but Amanda and Jacob surrounded her with care and attention, making her realize that she is not alone. She has a family. There are people who love her and who need her very much. And soon Amanda told her mother that she would have a grandson or granddaughter, and this gave the old woman the strength to live on. After meeting Jacob, Amanda managed to find a job in her specialty, and she quit the store. But with Violetta, they continued to communicate, and with Katie and Amelia became friends. Amanda and Jacob signed, deciding to do without a wedding. Now our heroes are preparing for the birth of a baby. They did not recognize the sex of the child in advance, as they will be equally happy with both a boy and a girl. But they have already thought of names for the future baby. If a boy is born, they will call them Molly, and if a girl, Molly, in honor of Jacob's mother. Sometimes it seems that life has reached a dead end, from which it is almost impossible to find a way out. But that's when we can have people in our lives who will lend a helping hand. That's what happened in Amanda's life. After a series of troubles and hardships, fate stopped testing her for strength and brought our heroine together with good people, thanks to whom her life got better and gained new meaning.
Leslie hurried home, and despite the nasty light rain and gray clouds in the sky, she was in a great mood. After work, she stopped by the doctor's office and got the wonderful news that she was finally pregnant after 7 years of marriage. For the first 5 years, she and John had not planned to become parents, having decided to live for themselves, to travel well, and then somehow it did not work out, although both were healthy and ready to add to the family. "Hi," said Leslie, going into the kitchen, where John was sitting and drinking coffee. He looked a little gloomy in his eyes. Leslie felt uneasy and goosebumps ran through her body. "Why are you like that? Did something happen?" she asked. "Sit down," he said, and Leslie obediently settled into the chair next to him. Anyway, John lowered his eyes, and after a few seconds he looked at his wife again. "Leslie, I'm sorry, but I have another one," he squeezed out of himself. It was like a thunderclap. Yesterday everything was as usual, and she did not notice changes in her husband's behavior, and today such news. Leslie was not one of those who arranged scandals and used to solve everything calmly and civilized, but now she could hardly keep herself in control. "How long ago?" she asked. "Who cares?" John dismissed her with some irritation. "She's expecting my child, and I've decided to go to her." "That's ironic," Leslie thought and smiled sadly. "I'm expecting too," she said. "What are you waiting for?" asked John with bewilderment. "I'm waiting for the baby. I just went to the doctor." Leslie took the ultrasound results out of her purse and put them on the table. John immediately took them and studied them inside, rubbing his head. "That's all we need," he said. "It's just the way it is." "John, I'm not holding you back. The baby and I can handle ourselves," she said. "But don't push pity and don't play noble," he said a little harshly. "I didn't even think about it, just informing, because the child is yours. I'll go to her anyway. I will help you, of course, money, but understand, I love her." It sounded like an excuse. "I'm not holding out. You know you do." It was certainly very bitter, painful, but Leslie said calmly, "Because the point of scandal, and you cannot hold the one who wanted to leave. I already feel like a jerk, and you're just so miserable. John, you're the one who's getting all worked up. I'm not making a scene. I'm letting you go. I'm normal. I'm just like I've always been," she said, not showing her husband how painful and bad it was for her. He looked at his wife carefully. It seems really normal, except that a little pale, so it may be because of pregnancy, and he screwed himself up, waiting for the plates to fly at him in hysterics, which usually wouldn't arrange in such situations. She probably never loved him since she was so calm, John thought. "Shall I go then?" he asked. "Go," Leslie replied. John slipped into the room and took the suitcase he had packed beforehand. He wanted to go to Anna even earlier, but he did not dare. Their romance lasted 7 months, and to Leslie he got used to, and it was cozy with her, comfortable, but after learning about Anna's pregnancy finally decided. But it was not by chance that it turned out that Leslie is expecting a child. When the door slammed behind John, Leslie certainly cried, but tears cannot help grief, and life goes on, especially soon she will finally become a mother. When the next day Leslie came out of work, she was very surprised to see John. "Why are you here?" she asked, waving to her colleague, with whom they left the office, merrily discussing the last date. "I was worried about you," he said, "but I see you're fine, cheerful and cheerful, as if nothing had happened. And you want me to cry and tear my hair out?" she asked. "Well, abandoned women are usually depressed, so I was afraid. I'm not going to get depressed. There are worse dramas in life, and I have a baby to think about," Leslie replied. "That's how you live with a person. He becomes dear, his own, and suddenly in an instant everything changes, and here he is, the same person, only completely alien," she thought, looking at her husband. "The situation is certainly, you got pregnant at the wrong time." Scratching the back of his head, he said. "Aya, you were involved in the process," Leslie said a little indignantly. "So you haven't gotten pregnant in 2 years, so I relaxed. All right, well, it's just the way it is. I'll help out and come once a week when the baby's born. I'm not giving up on my baby. It's definitely mine, right?" Leslie opened her mouth and widened her eyes. That was a question she hadn't expected. "John, are you all right?" she asked in a slightly higher tone. Okay, I'm sorry, and I should file for divorce soon." "Okay," she agreed. "So I'm out of here then?" "Go." They went in different directions, and Leslie was thinking and did not notice a huge puddle on the road, along which she walked leisurely to the subway, not hearing anything around. She came to her senses only when a wave of mud pelted her from head to toe, and the guilty car was backing up. "Girl, I'm honking. Are you deaf?" asked a woman in her 50s who was driving. "I'm just pregnant and my husband left me. I'm thinking," Leslie answered, trying to brush a little dirt off herself. She didn't know why she said it, but it just came out of her mouth. She was brooding. If only there was someone to think about. Your husband's an asshole and there's nothing to think about. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up," said the woman. "I'll do it myself. I'll drive home and wash up." "And where will you go like that? You'll scare everyone in the subway. Get in." Leslie thought for a while and finally got in the car. "It's my fault too. I was rushing. I didn't slow down in time," said the woman. "It's okay," Leslie replied. She took out a mirror from her purse and aghast, looking at her reflection. Taking a handkerchief out of her pocket, Leslie began to wipe the dirt off her face. Soon they were in a neighborhood of new buildings, and then Leslie found herself in a huge 5-room apartment with panoramic windows, a large hallway, and definitely not the cheapest furniture. "Wow, what a place you have here," she said. "It's not my place." The woman looked at her watch. "It's fine. The landlord won't be back for a while, and Cody will be back from his tour in about 3 hours. Take off your coat and get in the tub. I'll get you a towel and a robe." Leslie didn't realize anything except one thing. This apartment was not her new acquaintances, and it was a little tense. "What about the clothes?" she asked. "You can't wash them." "You clean yourself up, and I'm going out for a little while." "Where?" Leslie asked, a little scared. "Don't be scared. I'll take a cake, we'll have tea. And then I'll drive you home. The car is warm, so you can get there without a coat." Leslie went into the bathtub, which was the size of a room of about 15 meters. "Wow," she blurted out. She looked in the large mirror hanging over the sink and was horrified. She'd scrubbed her face a little, but her hair, the collar of her sweater, everything was dirty. Then she tilted her head and looked at her jeans, and they were stained to the knee. She had to undress completely, but she only washed her head and face and washed her clothes and hung them to dry on the coil, hoping they would dry while they drank tea. Leslie heard the front door open. Well, here comes her new acquaintance, she thought, and throwing on the robe provided and wrapping a towel around her head, walked out of the bathroom. Leslie froze as it stumbled when she saw the man standing against the wall opposite the bathroom with his arms crossed over his chest. His gaze was clearly perplexed, and he was clearly not happy to see her. "Who are you?" Leslie blurted out, even though she knew perfectly well that the owner of the apartment was in front of her. The man was even more surprised and opened his eyes again. He obviously thought I was a glitch, Leslie concluded to herself. She'd never felt more awkward. "Curious," the man said. "I live here. How you got here and why you're washing in my bathroom is a mystery to me." Yeah. A woman brought me here. I was walking and she was driving and splashed me with mud, then brought me here so I could wash up. She'll be here soon." Leslie felt like a naughty girl. "Where did the woman go?" asked the man. "To get a cake," Leslie answered. "For cake? Why the cake?" asked the man, not taking his eyes off the uninvited guest. "For tea." "I don't understand." The man shook his head and looked at the stranger again. Then there was the sound of the door opening, and the very woman Leslie was talking about appeared on the threshold. She had a cake in her hands, and Leslie exhaled with relief. "Oh, William, what are you doing here?" she asked. "Actually, I live here, Mom," he answered, and his tone was very unhappy. "You're not usually here so early. Take the cake and put the kettle on." She handed the box with the cake to her son, and he went out into the corridor and took it. "Mom, why do I come home and a strange woman I don't know is washing in my bathroom?" "I was driving, she was walking. There was a puddle I honked, but she didn't hear me." Poor thing, her husband left her pregnant. The last words the woman said in a whisper, and Leslie wanted to fall through the ground. Not only was she being spoken of in the third person, but it was so personal. She mentally scolded herself. In general, the man was upset. "I hit the brakes, and the puddle is already near, so I poured it from head to toe. How could she get home like that? I couldn't take her to my place. She lived in the country, where it took more than an hour to get from her son's house." "Mom, were you racing again?" The man looked into his mother's eyes, but she looked away. "Oh, come on, William, and stop giving me teeth. Go into the kitchen and put the kettle on." "I can do that. You're the one talking down to me." He turned around and looked at Leslie, who was still standing in one place, as if she was stuck to him. "Come into the kitchen," he said. She nodded obediently and went where he said, sitting down like a poor relative on a stool at the edge of the table. Her new acquaintance followed her into the kitchen. "Here we are. Now we'll drink tea, and then I'll take you home," said the woman. "Oh, yes? What's your name?" "Leslie." "Why are you sitting on the side, Leslie? Come over here on the couch. It's more comfortable," said the woman, and Leslie timidly sat down, glancing at the owner of the apartment, as if looking for his approval. "My name is Maria, and my inhospitable son, as you have already realized, William." "And by patronymic?" asked Leslie. "I hate it when they call me by my middle name. Call me Aunt Maria. And him, William, you can call him without a middle name too. Isn't he, son?" William shook his head, but didn't say anything. "Mom, how did you come here today?" he asked a little later, putting the pieces of cake on the plates. "I came on business," she answered, and went to get tea glasses. What kind of business?" Various things. Personal." "Personal then." William grinned. Mom didn't like the city. He went to see her more often than she came here. Probably met someone on the internet again and came here for a date, he thought. Aunt Maria knew that her son did not approve of online dating, so she did not advertise her meetings with potential suitors to him. Yes, again she missed, but the woman did not give up and persistently sought her feminine happiness. Tea was poured into glasses and the cake was placed on plates. Leslie still felt uncomfortable, and Aunt Maria obviously noticed it. "You drink the tea and eat the cake, Leslie, don't be shy," she said, and then turned to her son. "I'll stay with you today. I don't want to go out of town at night." "Stay," he replied. "The main thing is that your animals did not tear up the house in your absence." "They won't," Aunt Maria answered and looked at Leslie. "I have 2 dogs and 3 cats," she told her. There was silence, and when the tea party was over, William looked at his watch and then at Leslie. "Where do you live?" he asked, and she immediately told him her address. "Gather your things and I'll drive you." "I can drive myself." Aunt Maria stepped in. I have to pick up Cotty anyway, so I'll drop off our guest. Leslie went back into the bathroom. Of course, her sweater and jeans weren't completely dry, but she changed quickly and took the towel off her head, which she'd forgotten about. Your hair isn't dry yet. Looking at her, Aunt Maria said, William, give the man a hairdryer. Right away, he muttered and went off into one of the rooms and came out a minute later holding a hairdryer. Leslie dried her hair and also dried her clothes a little. Ready? William asked, lacing up his shoes. Yes, she answered. This is a funny situation, said William as they rode in the car. You'll have to excuse my mom. She's a bit of a speed freak. No offense to her. It's her own fault, she was thinking. She didn't see or hear anything. Leslie answered, I'm sorry to barge in on you like this. Well, it's not your fault, although I was in shock. Imagine my reaction when I come home and there's someone in the bathroom when no one should be home. I'm waiting, and suddenly you come out. The man laughed, remembering the scene. I can imagine, said Leslie and laughed too. I've never been in a more ridiculous situation in my life. My mom made us laugh. They drove the rest of the way in silence, listening to music and thinking about their own thoughts. William stopped the car in front of Leslie's driveway and looked at the large bag in her hands, from which her dirty coat was sticking out. Keep the coat, I'll take it to the dry cleaners, he said. No need, she replied. Yes, you do. Don't even argue, he insisted. William opened the glove compartment and pulled out a notepad and pen. Here, write down the phone number. Leslie wrote and handed the pad back to him. Thanks for the ride and again, sorry for the intrusion, she said before getting out of the car. Leslie entered the apartment and walked to the window in the kitchen. The sky was gray and not even a light could be seen in the distance. She thought about today's little incident and smiled. What had happened to her now seemed very amusing and even funny, especially her condition and William's face when they bumped into each other. A few days later, Leslie called William, and in the evening, he dropped off a clean coat at her house. Good as new, he said. Thank you. Leslie thanked him and went back to the apartment where her friend was waiting for her, who had come to visit to support her in her time of need. She first went to the window, but William's car was no longer in sight. Where did you go? Her friend asked her. I went to get my coat. Leslie didn't tell her friend about her recent adventure. I see. What are you going to do with the apartment? She asked. Leslie and Jacob had mortgaged it together when they were married. We hadn't discussed it yet. I hope he'll leave it to me and the baby. Dream on. It's rare for that to happen. Probably have to share. My friend sighed. Split it up. Then split it up. I don't want to get on my nerves about it. That's true. Robert and I are finally ready for a house. Good for you. Where do you want it? Well, we haven't decided yet. We have a few options, but we'll decide before summer. Are you coming to visit? Lucy, of course I will come if you invite me, answered Leslie, happy for her friend. Of course we'll invite you. Shish kebab, you can't have a sauna. Listen, and maybe you can introduce you to Robert. You know, the one I told you about at my work. Are you crazy? Robert who? Lucy, don't forget, I'm pregnant. It's not contagious. It's no problem for a normal man. No, it's ridiculous. They marry women with babies, so what difference does it make whether the baby's inside or outside? Lucy wouldn't give up. I'll cast my line. If he doesn't want to, no one's forcing him. He's been looking for a long time and he can't find anyone. Don't. I'm not in the mood for this right now. With a sad smile, replied Leslie. Just don't you dare to suffer for that bastard. He's not worth it. I'm talking about the baby, not the bastard. Toxicosis is starting, fatigue is constant. Yeah, it's not the most pleasant parts of pregnancy. Lucy remembered her pregnancy and labor and told her friend how it had been for her. Jacob called 3 weeks after the day they'd broken up and told her the apartment would have to be split in half. Where am I supposed to live with the baby? Leslie asked. We'll find you a studio. I will not leave on the street, do not worry. I'm not worried. After all, half the amount of their 2-room apartment cannot buy a studio apartment, and before the maternity to take a mortgage is not an option. She is carrying his child, and he wants to deprive her of a roof over her head. Leslie did not oppose the divorce, but could refuse to give it because she was in a position, but she didn't want to. She wrote that she agreed to the divorce and the equal division of the apartment. Nothing to buy with this money, Leslie said with a heavy sigh, studying the real estate market with Alyona. Yeah, what an asshole, Jacob. Who knew he'd turn out to be such a jerk? Lucy resented him. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. We'll figure something out. Can't the parents add to it? Stuffed. Are you kidding? They're living modestly, and I've been giving them some money. I can't get another mill. I'll probably have to look at a room. I'm crazy, with a kid in a rooming house. No, that's not an option. Then what's an option? 2-3 weeks, I'm homeless. Leslie wanted to cry. She didn't see any way out of this situation. She couldn't go back to her parents' one bedroom. Maybe she could talk to Jacob. Not half, but at least 2/3 for you and the baby. Then we'd have enough for an apartment. Lucy suggested it. I will. Right now. Leslie immediately called her ex-husband, but the call was answered by a woman's voice, and he was very unhappy to hear Leslie. Jacob is busy right now, he answered without hiding his irritation. It's urgent. Leslie insisted, but the phone was ringing off the hook. So much for talking, she said to Lucy. What a sheep, she said to her friend. Leslie managed to talk to Jacob the next day. Leslie, I found this studio. I'll text you the info now, he said. He did. Leslie's eyes bulged when she saw what a dump it was. Are you kidding me? She asked, immediately calling him back. By the way, it's worth a little more than half the price, Jacob argued. How am I supposed to get to work pregnant? It's half an hour to the subway if you take transit. There are several shuttle buses. I looked. Jacob, do you have any conscience? I almost screamed at Leslie. It's not like I'm putting you out on the street. We're living in a rented apartment right now, and you're like a queen in a 2-bedroom. I'm thinking of moving into it, and we'll buy you that studio. It'll be easier. Oh yeah, it's easier for you. I've lived with you for years, and I never thought you were such a jerk. Leslie couldn't take it anymore. Anyway, don't blow your brains out and don't insult me. Either that studio or take the money and look for a place to live. Jacob muttered nervously and hung up. Let's go to the cottage. You'll have a good time. We'll get some fresh air. It's good for you, by the way, said Lucy when they met up with Tanya again. I'm not in the mood, replied Leslie. It's not a bad studio after all. It's better than a room in a communal apartment, said Lucy. In itself, yes, not bad. But the commute to work, those shuttles are jam-packed, and me with a belly then in them how to ride, Leslie said, almost crying. You have to deal with problems as they come up. And at the weekend you go with us and I don't know anything, replied Lucy. At the newly acquired dacha of a friend, Lucy liked it. A good house, a plot of 13 hectares, a banya, a greenhouse, water in the house. Beauty in a word. I've had some fun. Well, Robert, as Leslie supposed, did not want to get acquainted with a woman in a position. And Leslie understood him perfectly well, and she didn't want to meet him either. She thought about William often, remembering again and again how she had come out of the bathroom in his apartment and bumped into him. For some reason, the man never left her mind. She even hoped in her heart that he would call her. But he didn't, and even so, Leslie was sure that they would meet again. She felt it on some intuitive level, and she wanted it to happen soon. When it's warm, we'll go to the lake. It's close by, Lucy said as they swung on the big garden swing. It's a nice place. It's beautiful, Leslie replied and thought again about her new home. As they drove here, they passed the neighborhood where she would soon live. The neighborhood itself is not bad, a lot of greenery, playgrounds, there is a garden and a school, and a clinic in the yard. And if it were not for the road to the subway, Leslie would be quite happy with everything. The day came when it was time to move. From the former apartment, Leslie took the couch, kitchen table, 2 chairs, dishes, new linens that they hadn't had time to use, towels, a TV from the kitchen, and a microwave and kettle, which caused displeasure on the part of Jacob's new girlfriend, judging by the fact that he called and told Leslie that she had to coordinate with him about what she wanted to take. But Leslie had just sent him away, especially since she'd taken less than half of the property, and his grumbling about the studio being worth more than the amount she was entitled to had been ignored. The conditions were somewhat high, because she had just ordered the kitchen furniture, and so far she was doing with a microwave, and the closet in the hallway was only going to order. But still she was now the owner of not a room in the communal, and a very decent studio with a meter of 35 meters and a large wide balcony from which you can make a room. The only thing that tormented Leslie was the distance from the subway. And here it is the first day, when you have to go to work from the new house. Leslie got off early, afraid she'd be late. At the bus stop, there was already a decent number of people in line for the bus. When the bus pulled up, everyone rushed to take their seats, shoving each other. Leslie was horrified at what was happening, but she didn't risk getting on. The packed bus left, and new people kept coming and coming to the stop. I knew this would happen, she thought, glancing nervously at her watch. 10 minutes later, another bus pulled up, and it happened again. Leslie remained standing at the stop, not knowing what to do. When the third bus came, she climbed into it, hoping she wouldn't be crushed. "How did you get there?" Lucy asked when she called her friend at lunchtime. "Terrible. I missed 2 buses, and I barely squeezed into the third." "Lucy, how am I supposed to drive with a belly? I almost fainted on the ride today." "You poor thing. Why don't you stay with your parents for a while? Until your paternity." "In the kitchen? I don't know, Lucy. They're gonna build a subway there, but it's gonna take years to build, so I'm screwed." That evening, Leslie was dreading the ride home, but surprisingly, she even managed to get a seat. And while the minibus was waiting for passengers, the crowd was pretty big. A granny with a cart and a backpack stood over Leslie's shoulder. For a minute she sniffed, grunted, and then, apparently realizing that this method does not work, moved to action. "Sweetie, didn't they teach you to give way to elderly people? You have no conscience at all." She sees an old woman standing there with her things and sits there as if she doesn't notice. The insolent one. Leslie was starting to boil. It's disgusting when you do not know the situation and let you make such words in your address. No one forced you to get on the bus with such things. You saw when you got on that there were no vacant seats. And I'm expecting a baby, and I don't want someone to accidentally elbow me in the stomach or throw up, like on you, she said. "You're all pregnant at once." The grandmother muttered unhappily and twisted her head around, looking for a new victim. A woman in her 30s was sitting a little farther away, and the grandmother went towards her, trying to squeeze in front with her cart and shoving everyone with her backpack. "Could you be more careful?" Irritated, said a man standing in the way of the restless old woman, who she hit in the face with her backpack. "You have to take off your backpack in transportation." "Don't get smartest." Granny snapped at him. "Give me a seat." Then she turned to the woman and snidely added, "Or is she pregnant too?" She sits, her eyes closed. Everyone is so tired, they just sit on their ass and fall asleep right away. "Would you calm down and get off the bus if you are not satisfied with something?" Another man said. "I didn't ask you, you little brat." The woman snapped at him, almost reaching her new victim. "Come on, my dear, get up. You'll be home," she said to the other one. "I've been at the operating table for almost 24 hours, so I'm not ready to stand for 5 minutes," she replied. The woman turned out to be a surgeon, and she really had a very hard day today. A scandal broke out on the whole bus because the woman raised a fuss, insulting everyone around her because no one took off from the seat, and she obviously did not plan to stand. The driver said that he would not move from the seat, and the passengers demanded to drop off the scandalized woman. Leslie felt dizzy from the noise. In the end, the nasty grandmother got off the bus, cursing everyone and everything, and it finally went. Leslie approached the bus stop, mentally tuning in to the fact that she would have to take it with the fight, as suddenly a car flew by and began to brake sharply and started backing up. This car was familiar to Leslie. "How did you get here so early, Leslie?" Aunt Maria asked her when she reached the bus stop. "Hello, I live here now," Leslie replied, smiling at the woman. "Hop on. I'll drop you off in the city." Leslie gladly accepted that offer and got into the car. "You found a place to live too," said Aunt Maria. "Or a room in the commutable or here?" "The choice was not great," said Leslie. "So you divorced your husband and the apartment was divorced?" "Yeah, it's a nice apartment, even though it's a studio, but it's a bitch to get to work." "I know. I've seen how crowded all the shuttles are in the morning. It's the only way for you to get there when you're pregnant." Aunt Maria looked at Leslie's belly, which was already a little visible. "I don't know how I will continue, but I have no other options," Leslie replied sadly. "You know, it's not for nothing that we met for the second time," Aunt Maria said a little thoughtfully. "You'll stay at Williams for now." Leslie opened her mouth in surprise and looked at the woman in bewilderment. "Don't look at me like I'm crazy. My son is away on a business trip to Alaska and will be back in 3 months. The apartment is empty anyway, so why not let a good man live in it? You're a nice person, aren't you?" The woman turned her head for a second and looked at the dazed Leslie. "I guess I am," she said confusedly. "That's good." Uncomfortable. What's your son gonna say? I don't think he'll like it, Leslie said, coming to her senses. I'll call him later. I'm sure William won't mind. Aunt Maria drove Leslie to work, and she went about her business, having agreed with her that she would pick her up in the evening. All day Leslie thought about Aunt Maria and her proposal. Of course she wanted to accept it, because William's apartment was in the city, and the nearest subway was a 5-minute walk. But who would let a complete stranger live in their house? Aunt Maria was waiting for Leslie when she came home from work. We'll go get your things, and then we'll go to William's apartment, said Aunt Maria as Leslie got into the car. Did he really agree? She was surprised. Well, he saw that you are a decent girl, so why not? And where does your grandson live now? Asked Leslie, remembering a certain Slavka who went on an excursion. She understood that he was William's son and consequently Aunt Maria's grandson. So he moved in with his mother. She works in India for half a year at a time. That's her shift method. Half a year there, then half a year here. She came back recently, and in the summer they'll move to my country house. They drove to Leslie's house, where she quickly packed a suitcase, and then came to the 5-room house, where Leslie had already visited. Aunt Maria, is your son a businessman? Asked Leslie, looking again at the huge apartment. No, William is an architect. This apartment complex was built according to his design, answered Aunt Maria. And what do you do? Purchasing manager, Leslie answered. And what do you buy? Cosmetics, perfume. It's a wholesale company. Then we supply the big chains. I'm a hairdresser. I haven't worked in a salon in a long time. I set aside one day every 10 days and drive around to my clients. I'd also rent out our old apartment because William doesn't need it anymore. I can give you a good haircut because you've got a little couture on your head. Leslie hadn't had a lot of time to do her hair lately. She pulled a mirror out of her purse and looked at her reflection. Divorce and pregnancy are no reason to neglect yourself. You'll never find a decent man like that. I'm not looking for one. What kind of man am I looking for now? And who'd be interested in you with a pot belly? If you think about it that way, sure. I married Papa William when my daughter Sarah was a year old, and we lived happily together for 23 years. So you say, where is he now? That's what Leslie said. He died 5 years ago. Hard. But let's not talk about sad things. Why don't you get out of your couture and let's get your head in order? You can't let your personal life go to waste. A child is great, but it's hard for a woman without a man. You haven't realized that yet. You haven't felt it. Leslie let her hair down, and Aunt Maria sat her on a chair in the kitchen and taking out of her purse scissors and a comb, began to work. Well, it's different now, she said, having finished the haircut, and gave Leslie a mirror to evaluate the result. Thank you. Very nice. Leslie thanked her, looking at her new look. I'll show you the apartment and what's where, and then I'll go. Aunt Maria gave Leslie a tour of her son's apartment and showed her the room where Leslie would live. I don't know how to thank you, she said as Aunt Maria was about to leave. My parents taught me as a child that people should be helped, and if it's in my power, I'm always happy to help a good person. Aunt Maria left, and Leslie was left alone in this huge apartment. The main thing is not to spoil or break anything, she thought. You see, it's all worked out so well, said Leslie to Lucy when she called her after work and told her the whole story of meeting Aunt Maria. I've always believed that all the encounters in our lives are not coincidental. Is this Aunt Maria's son okay? Lucy asked. Nothing, answered Leslie. William was a very attractive man, at least of her taste, and thoughts of him kept coming to Leslie, especially when she passed by the bathroom in his apartment. So maybe you should look at him? Lucy continued. Who wants a woman pregnant by another man? He'd probably just snap his fingers, and there'd be a line a mile long of people wanting to marry him. Besides, he has a son, and it's not clear what kind of relationship he has with his son's mother. So check with Aunt Maria. No way. Why should I interrogate her like this? No, it's none of my business, Leslie answered. Well, you should. It's worth a shot. You don't know anything about this William thing for sure. If you did, you might get a permanent place in his mansion. Lucy. What, Lucy? You say that like it's the most important thing. Well, it's not the least important thing, especially since you're going to have to go back to the middle of nowhere. They're not going to build a subway there anytime soon, and with a baby, you can't get out of there. You can't get a lot of cab rides, and you're looking at a lot of prospects. There are no prospects. I'll manage somehow. The main thing is to bear and give birth to a healthy baby, Leslie replied. The long-awaited summer came, and on the first weekend, Leslie went to Lucy's cottage. I don't want to go back to the city, said Lucy. It's good to be a kid. She looked at her 4-year-old daughter running around the property after their beagle dog. Maruzia's staying here? Yeah, for the rest of the summer. Mom's coming tomorrow morning, and the 3 of them are gonna have a blast. You're keeping the animal too? Leslie looked at their dog. Sure. He's better off here than in the city in an apartment. Leslie agreed with her friend. It was really cool to live in a country house. She would not have refused to live like that, but she had no country house. Aunt Maria came to Leslie's house on Saturday to tell her the good news. She'd gotten her a doctor's note, and Leslie would be on sick leave for the rest of the month. Aunt Maria, you're just my good fairy, said Leslie. She was very grateful to this woman who does so much for her a complete stranger. Now it remains to send you to the ball and find a prince. Aunt Maria replied with a cheerful smile. And how are you doing with princes? Asked Leslie. Aunt Maria had told her several times about dating men from the dating site. It's kind of lame. Princes in words, but nothing in deed. Maybe we should take a break. Why don't I set you up with my uncle? Suddenly Leslie suggested. Why didn't she think of that before? He's about the same age as Aunt Maria. Ex-military widower. He's been single for 3 years, but he's not averse to settling down. Who's the uncle? Aunt Maria asked, and Leslie noticed the interest in the woman's eyes. She told all about Uncle Steve and showed his pictures that were in her phone. You have an uncle like that and you kept quiet? Aunt Maria asked. When? Well, I can at least call him today and we'll decide. Call him? We can organize a picnic at my dacha this weekend. I invite both you and Uncle. Leslie immediately called her relative, and he hesitated a bit, but finally agreed to meet. He's a little shy, Leslie said when she finished talking to him. Oh, that's so cute. Dreamily sighing, Aunt Maria replied. Leslie was glad that she could do something for this wonderful woman. What was Leslie's surprise when she realized that Aunt Maria's cottage was in the same gardening area as Lucy's new cottage, only a little higher up and closer to the woods. It really is a small world, she thought. Aunt Maria greeted her and Uncle Steve in full dress, and the table in the house was bursting with all sorts of treats. Leslie was surprised that Aunt Maria was acting differently today, as if she had turned from a hurricane into a calm, and that she had a shy blush on her cheeks at times. That there was a spark between Aunt Maria and her Uncle Leslie noticed. She watched them both closely, and it seemed to her that they were just perfect for each other. They were a month away from giving birth. She moved into her studio as soon as she moved out of William's apartment, occasionally visiting Lucy's cottage and Aunt Maria and Uncle Steve, who were having an affair and moving in quickly. Aunt Maria didn't want to live in the city, and he didn't mind living in the country at all. Oh, Tanechka, I told you there are no chance meetings in life. Thank you for Steve. Now I owe you one, said Aunt Maria as they drank tea in her house and Steve went out to the store. Oh, come on. You've done so much for me already, Aunt Maria, so no debt, Leslie objected. No, you helped me find womanhood, so I'll help you find it too. And where will I find it, Aunt Maria? Leslie sighed and smiled a little. Well, I don't know that yet. It's sometimes there, but we can't see it. Aunt Maria said thoughtfully and a little mysteriously. Does your ex call? Is he interested in your health? Does he give you money? No, he called once during all this time, asked me how I was doing. It was just for show, but he doesn't really care about me. He's already got a son. New wife, new family. He doesn't give me any money. The baby hasn't been born yet, so it's too early for alimony. I can't understand how it's possible. One child he's going to raise, and the other is like a stranger's uncle. A jerk is a jerk. Let's not talk about him. Steve's coming from the store, and we'll bake my special berry pie. Aunt Maria smiled. Let's go pick some berries. They left the house and Aunt Maria handed Leslie a small plastic bowl. Leslie, you're staying with us tomorrow, too, aren't you? She asked. Well, I was going home. My friend and her family are leaving the cottage today, and I thought I'd take the car with them. William is coming tonight, and tomorrow night he'll be back in town. You can go with him. Aunt Maria said, We'll bring my granddaughter, my favorite, at last. I've missed him. I'll introduce you at last. Okay, agreed Leslie. She was curious, but she was too shy to ask whether William was divorced from the mother of his son or not. After all, It was strange that she was the one living in his apartment and not the one with her son. The pie was still in the oven, soaking the house with the flavor of muffins and strawberries, when the car honked and Uncle Steve went to open the gate. Leslie didn't know how to bake, but she memorized the recipe while she was helping Aunt Marie. The aroma around her almost made her drool, and she couldn't wait to taste the pie. Soon voices were heard and the front door swung open. The first to run into the kitchen was a boy about 7, 8 years old, the same Cody that Leslie had heard about many times, and today she finally saw him. "My bunny's here." Aunt Maria hugged the boy and kissed him on the top of his head. "Grandma, I missed you," he said. "I missed you too. Leslie and I baked my specialty cake. 10 more minutes and we'll be having tea." Cody turned and looked at Leslie and then back at Grandma. "Who's that?" he asked. "And this is Leslie, Uncle Steve's niece and a good friend of mine." Cody walked over to Leslie and extended his hand to her. "Cody." He introduced himself. "Leslie," she replied, noticing that the boy was scrutinizing her stomach. "Do you have a baby in there?" he asked. "A baby," answered Leslie, putting her hands on her stomach. "And who?" "Cody," Aunt Maria yelled at him. "Don't ask questions." "It's nothing," said Leslie and smiled at the boy. "I have a little girl in there. Can I play with her when she's born? Here's an idea. You better go have some strawberries while you sing." Aunt Maria handed the child a basin, and he grabbed it and ran out of the house, almost knocking down his mother, who had just entered the house. "Hi, Mommy." A tall, pretty woman with brown hair walked up to Aunt Maria and pecked her on the cheek. Mmm. She closed her eyes, inhaling the flavor of the pie. "My favorite pie." "Hi, Sarah. It is. Almost done. Why don't I introduce you to Leslie?" Leslie realized that Cody was not William's son, and his mother was not his wife, but his own sister. For some reason, it suddenly became very happy from such a truth. "Leslie, my daughter Sarah, I'd like you to meet her," said Aunt Maria. "Nice to meet you." Sarah gave Leslie a friendly smile. "And me," said Leslie with a smile. "Where is William?" asked her daughter Aunt Maria. "He and Uncle Steve went to the summer kitchen to sort out the groceries and barbecue." Aunt Maria took a pie out of the oven. "It's beautiful. Now we'll put the samovar on and go to the Gay's boat to drink tea," she said. When they left the house, Leslie was nervous when she saw Uncle Steve and William at the grill. Her arms and legs even shook a little when he looked at her. "Hello, Leslie," he said. "Hello," she answered, and for some reason her heart started to beat like it was going to jump out. "William, Steve, let's have tea. Then the kebab," Aunt Maria commanded. "Shish kebab first and then tea?" William asked. "By the time the kebab is ready, we'll all starve to death, and the pie's just out of the oven." "All right," William agreed. Everyone settled down at the big wooden table behind the house, and for some reason Leslie kept thinking about William, or rather about whether he had a girlfriend or a wife. "Stop," suddenly she said to herself. "I'm thinking about the wrong thing. Even if he has no one, which is unlikely, she is certainly not a candidate for a life partner. So there's no point in dreaming about unrealistic things," she told herself. But when it was time to go to sleep, she lay down on the bed and closed her eyes, and for some reason she saw him. Leslie realized that she had been thinking about William all evening, and had often thought about him since their ridiculous encounter. Of course she liked him, it was stupid to deny it, but it was better to switch to something else, and put him out of her mind. The next day after breakfast, they went to the lake, and Leslie even swam a little. The entrance to the water was gentle. Then there were kebabs, and after lunch she took a nap. When Leslie woke up, Aunt Maria and Sarah were working on the beds, Uncle Steve was chopping wood, and William and Cody were gone. Leslie left the house and went to help the women in the vegetable garden, but they told her to rest, and they would manage on their own. Soon William arrived. It turned out that he and Cody had gone for a ride on the ATV. Leslie suddenly wanted to ride it too, especially if William was driving. She shook her head, trying to wake up from this obsession. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Leslie left Aunt Maria's cottage with Bones. "Isn't it blowing?" he asked. "The window can be covered." "No, thank you. On the contrary, it's so nice," Leslie replied. They drove most of the way in silence, and Leslie looked out the window at the forest and fields changing each other. She wanted to talk to Kostya about something, but for some reason she was afraid to start a conversation, because maybe he didn't want to talk to her at all. William drove Leslie to the driveway and helped her out of the car, handing her a bag of berries that Aunt Maria had given her. "Goodbye," he said before getting into the car. "Goodbye," Leslie replied, a slight smile touching the corners of her lips. When she got home, she immediately went to the window. She had just closed the door behind her parents when Aunt Maria called her and told her that William was coming over in about an hour to drop off some berries and a piece of blackcurrant pie. Leslie lay down on the couch and turned on the TV. She flipped through a few channels and found some domestic melodrama and decided to watch it until William arrived. It was just under an hour later when she suddenly felt warm water running down her thighs. Ouch! She looked down at her soap breeches, and after a little while she regained consciousness. She changed her clothes and called her parents, who were about to rush back to her daughter's house. "Don't, Mom," she said. "What are you writing now? I'll call you when I'm in labor, and they won't let me in the room anyway." "Come on, I'll call an ambulance." But before she called the ambulance, she dialed Jacob's number. He was the father of her baby, so she thought she should let him know she was going to have the baby. "Leslie, I'll be sure to stop by the birth center the other day," he said. "You go ahead and call an ambulance and then text me when you're in labor." "Okay." "You better text, not call." "Okay." Leslie grinned bitterly. Jacob obviously didn't care about her or their daughter. The doorbell rang, and she remembered that William was supposed to drop by to deliver the berries. "Is everything okay?" William asked, noticing that Leslie was definitely worried about something. "Not really. I have to go to the hospital," she said worriedly. "William, I'm sorry, but I need to call an ambulance." "I can drive you." "Go ahead," he said. Leslie had packed everything just in case a week ago, and the bag with the necessary things was in the hallway. "I'm ready," she said. "Great. Let's put the berries in the freezer, and you can take the pie with you." Sure." Leslie took the bag of berries and put it in the freezer, and William took her bag. 5 minutes later, they were outside his car. "Which maternity hospital should we go to?" he asked, and Leslie dictated the address. William stopped the car in front of the waiting room and helped Leslie out. "Thank you." She thanked him and reached out to take her bag from him. "I'll walk you out. Come on." "I'm fine." "No need. Thank you." "Don't fight." William took her under his arm and led her to the door. Leslie was sent to the exam room, and William waited for the nurse, who showed up about 10 minutes later. "You can go home now," she said. "Your wife's been admitted to the prenatal ward." "What does that mean?" William asked. "No contractions yet. Don't worry, everything's fine. There's a paid room available today. Would you like to take it?" "Come on," William answered in confusion. The nurse called someone, saying that they would come to pay for the room, and then turned to William. "Go to the right and straight ahead. There will be a postpartum room. Tell the guard to pay for the charge, and he'll show you where to go." "Thank you," said William, and went where the nurse said. On the way, he thought about Leslie's ex-husband, wondering how he could be such an asshole to leave his pregnant wife. He should be here with her right now, but the bastard didn't give a damn about her or his own child. Leslie's contractions started a couple hours after she was brought to the prenatal ward, and she didn't give birth until 6 in the morning. The labor was fairly quick and easy, and she finally got to see her baby girl. "There must be some mistake," said Leslie when she and her daughter were brought to the charge room. "There's no mistake," one of the nurses answered, "but I didn't pay for it." "Well, then one of your relatives did. Get some rest." Leslie gingerly got up from the bed where she had been placed a few minutes earlier and took her phone out of her bag. There were a lot of missed calls. Her parents, Aunt Maria, and Uncle Steve had called several times. There was nothing from Jacob, though. The first thing Leslie did was call her mom to tell her that their granddaughter had been born at 6.5, asking if they'd pay for her room. It was unlikely, but still. "No, my daughter. You know our finances are tight." Mom said, "Well, do you want me to come over?" "Mom, let's do it tonight. I want to rest." "Of course you do. What can I bring you?" "Don't bring anything. It's fed here," Leslie answered and then called Uncle Igor. "Well, congratulations," he said. "What did you name your daughter?" "Barbara," answered Leslie and smiled, looking at the sleeping baby. "I've got Maria on the phone." Uncle Steve had barely had time to say it before Aunt Maria's voice rang through the receiver. "Congratulations, Leslie. Come on, tell me what to bring you. Steve and I are already off to a low start. We'll stop by the store, and then we'll come straight to you. I was so lucky I sent William to you last night." "Aunt Maria, don't be in a hurry. I want to rest, and I have everything I need, and they feed me here. I know how they feed in maternity hospitals. It's impossible to eat. Okay, I'll figure out what to bring. You get some rest, and we'll be there by 5 o'clock. Okay. Aunt Maria, did you pay for a room for us? She asked. No. We wanted to, but William beat us to it. Leslie felt her heart race. William. Of course he did it, she thought. After talking to Aunt Maria, Leslie decided to text Jacob. Your daughter was born today at 6'5", 53 centimeters, 3.4 kilograms. And surprisingly, Jacob called back about 5 minutes later. Hi, he said. Hi, Leslie answered. Listen, I'm not sure I can make it tonight. Probably not tomorrow either. Is everything okay over there? I'm fine here. I just told you that your baby was born, and I don't care if you come or not. Okay, no hard feelings. You know I've got a little boy. I've got a job. I don't get enough sleep. I'm like a zombie at work. No hard feelings. You want me to sympathize with you. Don't be sarcastic. I gotta get back to work. I'll call you later. Leslie grinned. He hadn't even asked her name. She'd lived with Jacob for 7 years, and how she'd been able to ignore that he was a shitty person, Leslie didn't understand. Leslie didn't get to nap for long because Barbara cried for food. Leslie took her daughter in her arms and leaned her against her breast, but she immediately stopped talking and closed her eyes, suckling against her mother. How small and defenseless she is, Leslie thought, gazing at her daughter. When Barbara had had enough to eat, Leslie carefully put her back in the cuvette. As she did so, there was a knock at the door. Leslie quietly went to the door and opened it. William was standing on the doorstep of her room. How are you doing in here? He asked, peering into the room. Thank you, we're fine. Come in, she said, inviting him in. Can't we start talking to each other now? He asked as he approached the cuvette, and Leslie nodded in agreement. She's so tiny. William smiled, looking at the sleeping Barbara. William, thank you. I mean you for the room. How much do I owe you? The man looked at her disapprovingly. If I do something, I do it on my own accord and I don't charge for it. He answered a little roughly. I'm just embarrassed because it's not cheap. Leslie mumbled, feeling her heart beat again. It's not your problem and don't worry about it. You've done enough for me. You let me stay in your house and I'm a complete stranger to you. Not strangers, considering your uncle and my mom are getting married. So you and I are practically related. Why don't you tell me what you and the baby need to bring? Nothing? I've got everything. Leslie answered, and her stomach suddenly rumbled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten in a long time. Leslie felt terribly embarrassed by the sound and a blush appeared on her cheeks. When was the last time you ate? William asked her. Yesterday, she admitted honestly. I slept through breakfast and it's still 2 hours till lunch. I'll be right back. William left the room and Leslie sat down on the bed and wrapped her arms around her head, trying to stop the slight shivering in her body. No man had ever had the same effect on her as William. She was always very tense and agitated in his presence. William returned 15 minutes later with a package in his hands. He walked over to the table and began to lay out its contents. There is a cafe on the first floor and the food there is quite normal, he said. Have some. Thank you. Leslie sat down at the table and began to chow down on chicken broth, then mashed potatoes with beef stew and a vitamin salad. She really was so hungry she hadn't even left a crumb. That's better, said William. You need to eat well now, don't you? I know I do. I just haven't had time to eat. Oh, okay. I'm gonna go and you get some rest. I will. William went to the door, but before he could get out, Leslie called him and he turned around. Thank you again for everything, she said and smiled, and William smiled back at her and left the room. Leslie slept intermittently, and around 5 in the evening, her parents and Uncle Steve and Aunt Maria came to visit her. Where did you get all this stuff? Leslie gasped, looking at the bags of food her family had brought. I don't plan to stay here for a month. Not so much there, but all useful. Aunt Maria answered and went to put everything in the refrigerator. Did John show up? Asked her mother, and the smile immediately fell off Leslie's face. I told him, and whether he comes or not, I do not care, she answered dryly. What a parasite, Leslie's father said. We have such a wonderful day today, and you talk about parasites, said Aunt Maria. Tanechka needs only positive emotions, so let's talk about something more pleasant and useful. I agree, said Uncle Steve. Leslie, Maria, and I would like you to stay with us after your discharge. Uncle Steve, I was planning on going to my house. We'll just be in the way. Barbara won't let you sleep. You won't be in our way, said Aunt Maria. So she won't let you sleep? Is it better to sit alone in your little room? We're always here to help, and yet I do not want to embarrass you, answered Leslie. Don't be ridiculous. There are 6 rooms in the house. She will. Stop being modest and arguing with your elders. Steve and I insist. Leslie knew it was useless to argue with Aunt Maria, so she agreed, but only at first. John never showed up, but William visited Leslie every day. He didn't come for long, and Leslie waited for him with bated breath each time. Her parents and Uncle Steve and Aunt Mary never left her for a day. There were no health problems, so they were discharged from the hospital on the 4th day. William and her parents came to meet them, while Uncle Steve and Aunt Maria stayed at home to get everything ready for the new residents. Leslie felt very happy, because so many people surrounded her and Barbara with care and attention. There was of course a very awkward moment when William was handed the baby and congratulated on the birth of his daughter, but he did not object and, giving Leslie flowers, took Barbara in his arms. By their arrival, the table was set, the house was decorated with colorful balloons, and the room on the first floor was completely transformed into a nursery. Seeing all this, Leslie was so moved that she could not contain her emotions and cried with happiness. Wet Kingdom is not divorced, and sit down at the table. Aunt Maria commanded and put her arm around Leslie. Sit down while Barbara is asleep. We have prepared so much here, so sing properly. Wiping away her tears of joy, Leslie sat down at the table, and William carefully put various dishes on her plate. Everyone smiled and toasted to the health of Leslie and her daughter, and Leslie felt very light and warm. Jacob called in the evening, when Leslie was feeding Barbara again. Hi, I'm sorry. I couldn't get away. Tomorrow afternoon, I think I can stop by for a quick visit. What can I get you? He said. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Jacob, you can't stop by tomorrow. I'm not in the hospital anymore. We were discharged today. Leslie answered. She didn't want to see Jacob tomorrow or ever. I'll stop by your house. I had to take the day off, and I couldn't find the time. You can't go home. I'm staying with relatives. What in-laws? Her ex-husband was surprised. At my uncle and his future wife. Your uncle's getting married. Oh yeah. What's he want at his age? Jacob grinned. That's none of your business, so don't come back tomorrow, Leslie replied rather sharply. I know you're upset with me, but let's act like civilized people. I'll come to my uncle's house tomorrow. Give me the address. It's his future wife's house and you won't be welcome here. Why did I take the day off? Jacob was angry. How am I supposed to see my daughter? You won't be welcome. You're making an enemy of the people out of me. Suddenly you wanted to see your daughter? I was in the hospital for 3 days. If I wanted to see her, I would have. I didn't have time, I told you. If you want to, you'll find the time. Here we go. How much longer are you gonna be mad? Anyway, Leslie, let's figure out a way to meet tomorrow, because then I don't know when I can get away. And don't be mean to me. No one's being mean. I thought I'd take her for a walk in the garden in the morning, if you want to come and keep her company and see her daughter, but I won't invite her in. Not even tea? You're mean, Leslie, and vindictive. Uh-huh. Tell me where to go. Leslie did not say the exact address, but only named the garden and the street where Lucy's house stood, and it was a 15-minute walk from Aunt Maria's house. Leslie was surprised at John's punctuality. He was already at the appointed place when she got there. Hi, he said and looked into the stroller. What's the name? Barbara, Leslie answered. That's a beautiful name. We named our son Dominic. Can I have my last name? No, my last name. Leslie didn't change her last name when she married Jacob because she didn't want to redo a lot of paperwork. Okay, what I was gonna say is, Leslie, there's a lot of expenses right now with the mortgage on your apartment and the baby and the other things. Why don't you hold off on the child support until Anna goes to work? Jacob looked at Leslie, hoping that she would understand how difficult this was for him. That's how it is. Leslie grinned. And your daughter has a lot of things to do, and I'm not going to work for a while. Did you think of that? I don't mean anything from you, though. And you know what, Jacob? I'm gonna put my daughter in my name and put a dash under paternity. It'll be better for everyone and less trouble for you. Leslie blurted out. Why are you freaking out? I wanted to talk to you like a human being. I'm not giving up on my daughter. I'll help you, but only a little later. Don't, Jacob. I'm not alone. I can provide for my own child. And why would Barbara want a father she'd only see once a month at best? I can't cut in half. Anna doesn't like that we're talking to you. I came today without telling her that I took the day off. It makes me neither hot nor cold, and I don't care about you or your Anna and your problems. Let's do what I say. Give up the baby? That's right. You don't need her anyway. That way you won't have to tear yourself apart. It's not right. Jacob's been thinking. How long have you been right? You're not even here now because you want to see your daughter, but because you're only concerned with your own problems, and you're discussing them with me as if I'm interested. You're making a monster out of me. You're like an angel in the flesh. By the way, good wives don't leave good husbands. I'm not your wife anymore, so don't try to hurt or offend me. It doesn't affect me. Go home. I think we're done talking. Suit yourself. Don't ask me for anything later. It'll be too late. I won't, don't worry. Leslie turned and walked away from Jacob. He disgusted her, and she wondered again how she hadn't noticed for 7 years that he was so rotten. Jacob silently got into his car and drove away, browbeating his ex-wife and wondering why all women were so bitchy and mercantile. William stayed at the cottage and worked on his laptop in the kitchen. Sarah and her son and Aunt Maria and Uncle Steve went into town, and Leslie went out to the vegetable garden to pick berries. After picking a basin full of strawberries, she returned to the house and heard Barbara crying. But no sooner had she reached her and her daughter's room than she saw William rocking her daughter in his arms. I'm sorry. I didn't hear her crying in the vegetable garden, said Leslie, taking the baby from him. She felt bad for distracting him from his work. Leslie, haven't you noticed that you're always apologizing to me and thanking me for every little thing? A baby cries. It's not a big deal. It's just that you're working and there's noise, she said quietly. I'm almost done, and Barbara's not bothering me at all. Stop apologizing for everything. Barbara fell asleep again after Leslie changed her diaper and rocked her for about 10 minutes. Let's go and have some tea, said William to Leslie, and she silently followed him into the kitchen. I wanted to ask you, when are you going to go to the city to get the birth certificate and registration for Barbara? In about a week or so. Why? Leslie was a little surprised by his question. I'll have to leave there for 3 days, so tell me when you're going to go, so I can adjust my plans and take you there. William replied, If you can't make it, Uncle Steve will. You don't have to change your plans for us. William leaned back in his chair and sighed. Well, you tell me what day, I'll take you. Okay, Leslie realized that he didn't like her previous answer. Do you want to go for a walk? He asked. Yes, I wanted to after I picked berries, she answered. Go. Leslie smiled. I'm really glad Aunt Maria threw that mud on me back then, she admitted, and William laughed. Well, I guess you weren't very glad at the time, he said. That's true, Leslie replied, remembering that day. And then she and I met again when I was standing at the bus stop, wondering how I was going to cram myself into the bus. It was fate. William looked at Leslie, and she saw something in his gaze that she couldn't explain, but it made her soul tingle. Aunt Maria thinks it's no accident either, Leslie answered. Don't you think so? William asked. Maybe. One time you can write it off as an accident, but the second time. Doesn't the ex-husband ask you back? William suddenly asked. Who's expecting him back? He doesn't need us. And you don't need him? And we don't need him either. He came to ask me not to collect child support for a year. Leslie grinned. I'm going to put Barbara in my last name, and I won't list him as the father. I don't want anything to do with that man. Are you mad at him? More at myself because I was so blind, I didn't see who I was living with. We can all be blind, William answered, and Leslie noticed that his face became serious, and he seemed to be immersed in some memories. William, why aren't you married? Leslie couldn't stand it. It was a question that had been on her mind for a long time, and now it was coming out. I was divorced not so long ago, he answered calmly. Of course, Leslie wanted to know why, but she had no right to ask, because it was none of her business, and it was not good to poke your nose into someone else's private life. William wasn't going to go into details. Shall we go to the lake? He asked. We could, she answered. They talked about distracted topics without touching each other's private lives, and Leslie felt so good next to him that she didn't want their walk to end. They came to the lake and sat down on the shore. I'd like to go swimming now, said Leslie. She wished she had worn a bathing suit. "We can come here again later, then you can swim," answered William. Inside, Leslie shouted, "Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah," and her soul was filled with a feeling of happiness just from the fact that he was sitting here next to her. Now she was suddenly able to finally realize and admit to herself that she was in love with William. She was in love in a way that she had never been in love with any man before. Then Barbara suddenly started to rattle and whimper, and Leslie returned from heaven to earth. In the evening it rained, so the bathing had to be canceled, and the next day William went to town, which upset Leslie. "Why are you so sour this morning, Leslie?" Aunt Maria asked her at breakfast. "Didn't sleep well?" No. Barbara slept well tonight. I'm just sad," Leslie replied, picking at her plate with her fork. "Well, here we go. Nothing happens for nothing. Everything happens for a reason. What happened to you?" Aunt Maria looked at her point blank, and Leslie thought she was going to read her mind and realized that she had a crush on her son. And that would be it. It would be the end of their beautiful relationship, because it was one thing to be friends and another to be a daughter-in-law. But she thought Barbara would grow up without a father, so she got sad. Leslie said the first thing that came to mind. "Don't be so pessimistic." Aunt Maria frowned. "Don't anger the universe with that attitude." "I'll try, Aunt Maria," Leslie replied. "Can I help you with the garden?" "Cody and Sarah can help me." Aunt Maria looked out the window. "My bees. They're already working. Sarah and her son were already harvesting. You go to sleep or do your own thing." What business, Leslie thought. She lives here like a princess on everything. They don't let her do anything, only send her on vacation. She picked up the phone and called Lucy. "Hi, new mommy. I was going to call you today," she answered cheerfully. "This weekend we are going to the cottage and we are waiting for you and your cozy Avaka at the visit. I bought you so much stuff." "Hi, of course we will. You shouldn't have bought so much because we've already been gifted from all sides." "Oh, that's okay. We'll need everything. Did you see your daughter?" "I did, but I didn't really look. I don't want to talk about him." Leslie said no. "And we won't, especially since I found you a fiancé," Lucy said cryptically. "Are you kidding?" asked Leslie. "Not at all. Listen to me. His name is Logan. He works as a mechanic, has his own place and car. 37 years old, was married, but not for a long time. His own children cannot have. So looking for a woman with a child. I'll send you a photo. What do you say?" "You do not need to discount anything," answered Leslie. "And I'm not going to meet Logan or anyone else." "Why not?" Lucy was surprised. "It's because I managed to fall in love," Leslie confessed. "Wow," Lucy gasped. "When did you manage to do that? Who's the lucky guy?" "William." "Oh, wow," Lucy gasped again. So what? So what? So nothing. What about him?" "He's nothing." "Nothing at all. We went out yesterday." "That's it?" "Not really. Lucy, he drove me to the hospital, paid for my room, came to see me and Barbara every day, picked us up from the hospital. They handed Barbara to him, congratulated him, thought he was her father and my husband. It was so embarrassing." "Leslie, are you cuckoo?" "Why am I cuckoo? No man would do all that stuff if he didn't care about the woman." "You think so?" "You're so cuckoo. Use your brain. He's just a good man. I needed help and he helped me." "Just what? You think he likes me?" "Of course he does. It's obvious. Then why isn't he taking any action?" "Hello? Isn't action enough for you?" "He doesn't say he wants to be with me, that he loves me." "Say it first. He's already shown you that." "What if I say it and he..." "No, Lucy, I can't go first." Barbara woke up and cried. "Barbara's awake. She needs a diaper change," said Leslie. "I'll call you back." She couldn't get Lucy's words out of her head. Leslie remembered the way William had looked at her during the walk. It had seemed to her that he had looked at her in a special way. Maybe he really does care about me, she thought and smiled. "What's the matter with you today?" Aunt Maria asked Leslie when they were alone in the kitchen. Uncle Steve had gone to stoke the bathhouse, and Sarah and Cotty had gone to visit the neighbors. "Eh?" Leslie was so thoughtful, it was like she'd gone into a parallel reality, disconnected from this one. "She's been sad and brooding all day. Is something wrong?" Aunt Maria asked. "No, I'm fine." Leslie smiled. "You don't want to talk?" "Aunt Maria, really everything is fine and nothing happened." All right then. Tomorrow, by what time do you have to be in town? In the afternoon, Leslie got a call from the pediatric outpatient clinic and was told that tomorrow at around noon, a foster nurse would come to see her. Well, I think we should leave at 11:30. Uncle Steve's driving. William will drive her and then he'll bring her back. William? Leslie was both surprised and delighted at the same time. Yes, he's coming and he'll take you back tomorrow. He's got business in town, so he can go either way. We've really exploited him, said Leslie. Yeah, we did. You didn't exploit anybody. Leslie, his father, and I have tried to raise our son to be a real man. Of course, William has flaws, like everyone else, but we succeeded, especially since he is very similar to his father. And Kirill was a man with a capital letter. It was like living behind a stone wall with him. It is normal to help someone, especially if that someone is a woman or a child who needs help and care. Maybe I just haven't met anyone like him, Leslie replied. There aren't many like William, but there are plenty of men like your ex, although there are plenty of women. William was married, and Cheryl was all sweet, and they looked so happy, but she turned out to be a real piece of work. When they got married, they lived in my apartment, and I moved here, and I've been living here ever since. Cheryl wanted a career, and so did William, and it's not a quick process to build a career. Money was tight at first, so they lived modestly. They lived together for 3 years, and then Cheryl got pregnant. William did not say anything and made a secret abortion, and he found out a few months later. And that was the end of their marriage. Couldn't forgive? Leslie asked. Maybe you could forgive, I don't know. But how can you trust her after that? How can you make such decisions alone when you're married? They had a child together. And William's career had just taken off, his project was chosen, those new buildings, one of which was his apartment. And then 2 more projects were approved at once. He was on a business trip to work on one of them. So Leslie, you kept the child, despite the fact that your husband left you. And some people with a good and loving husband have abortions. Aunt Maria sighed sadly and looked out of the window. And there's William coming, she said, and went to meet her son. At last she had found out what she wanted to know, Leslie thought. She didn't understand women like Cheryl and imagined how hurt William was by such an act of a loved one. Soon Aunt Maria and William came into the house. Hi, he said to Leslie and opened the refrigerator. I'm starving. Hi, Leslie replied. Sit down at the table. Everything's in the oven. I'll heat it up. Aunt Maria said. I saw there's a bathhouse coming up. Are you coming? Asked William. Sure. First the girls, then the boys. And tomorrow Leslie and Barbara need a ride to their house. The nurse is coming. No problem. I'll do it. Leslie looked at William and thought how stupid Cheryl was. She didn't know him that much, but it was enough for her to realize that she never met a better man in her life, because there was no one better than him. If he had married her, she would never have betrayed him, would never have been mean to him. In the morning, right after breakfast, William took Leslie and Barbara to their house as promised. I have to run an errand. I'll be back in about 3 hours and we'll drive back, he said as he helped Leslie carry the cradle with the baby into the apartment. Okay, she replied. William left, and she went to the window. There he came out of the driveway, got into his car and drove slowly out of the yards. Leslie smiled a little sadly inside. She kept thinking about Alina's words about being the first to tell him how she felt. What if he didn't have any feelings for her, but was just helping her out of the goodness of his heart, because his mom and her uncle were getting married soon, and they would become one family. It was scary to admit her feelings. Being rejected, no. How you socialize after that? The foster nurse came as promised around noon. After examining the child and the living conditions, she took a brief look at everything and said that she would come back in 3 days at about the same time. Leslie was just about to go that day to get the birth certificate and registration done for her daughter. She thought she could do it all in one day. Leslie went to the window several times, looking for William's car. Not that she wanted to leave quickly, but she just wanted to see him, because when he was near, she was very happy, and her soul was warm and light. And so when she looked out the window once again, she saw a familiar car parked in front of her driveway. Her heart in her chest immediately beat more often, and a smile shone on her lips. Leslie looked out the window until the intercom rang. How are you? William asked, entering the apartment. We ate, changed our clothes, and went back to sleep, answered Leslie. Well done. Let's have tea. I've got some cake. You can have fish, can't you? Salmon pie. Yes, Leslie answered. William took a good look around the apartment. Living with a child in a small room like this, he thought, it's not good to cook where you sleep. Leslie put on the kettle and took out glasses, and William sat down on a stool at the small kitchen table. And how did the nurse assess the living conditions? He asked. She didn't say anything. I think it's all right. A lot of people live like that, Leslie replied. After all, it's a separate dwelling, not a communal apartment. I don't like these conditions and I don't want you to live here. Suddenly, William said, and Leslie turned around and looked at him in surprise. William got up from his chair and came so close to her that she could feel his light breath on her cheek. Leslie was so nervous that she thought she was going to faint. They looked into each other's eyes, and Leslie could hardly contain herself not to declare her love for him and not throw herself on his neck. Looking into William's eyes, Leslie couldn't take it anymore. I love you. It came out of her lips, and then Leslie didn't realize that she rushed to his neck or if he kissed her first, but her arms were already around his shoulders, and he was wrapping his arms around her waist, and they were kissing, pressing against each other. Their kiss lasted so long, and Leslie didn't want it to end at all. Her head was spinning, her heart was racing, and her soul was filled with a sense of happiness she had never felt before. But then Barbara rumbled, breaking their idyll, and they reluctantly pulled away from each other. We need to feed her, Leslie whispered, still in William's arms. Of course, he whispered back and touched his lips to hers again before releasing her to his daughter. Leslie fed Barbara and changed her diaper. The baby whimpered quietly again, and she walked over to William, who was sitting at the kitchen table, watching her with a smile the whole time. He sat Leslie on his lap and looked into her eyes. I don't ever want to part with you, he pronounced as he continued to smile. You've been on my mind since the first time we met. I thought about you all the time, too. William, I'm so happy right now that I want to cry. Leslie could hardly hold back her tears. Her feelings were mutual, and tears of joy were bursting out. What was that for? He asked and pulled her tighter against him. I love you so much that I want to cry. Stupid? Leslie smiled, but a tear ran down one of her cheeks. No, William answered and touched that cheek with the palm of his hand, gently wiping away the tear. I love you too, and I don't want you to cry. I really like your smile, and I always want to see it on your face. Good, replied Leslie, rewarding him with that smile. Now how about some tea? I'm a little hungry. Leslie got up from his lap and went to pour tea. Leslie, do you mind if we put me down as Barbara's father? William asked as Leslie sat down at the table. Would you really want that? Asked Leslie, glowing with happiness. If I love her mom and plan to marry her and live with her for the rest of my life, then I would really like her to be our mutual daughter, replied William. Of course I don't mind, answered Leslie. Do you want to marry me? Leslie could not believe that all this was happening, and she pinched her arm. Very much, and quickly. You will agree to be my wife, won't you? William rose from his chair and squatted down next to Tanya. He pulled a ring from his pants pocket, and Leslie gasped and covered her mouth with her palm. Tears ran down her cheeks, despite William's promise not to cry. William took Leslie's hand and slipped the ring onto her finger. Is that a yes? He asked in a whisper, and Leslie only shook her head in agreement many times before she whispered, yes, and threw herself around his neck. I'm a little worried. How do your mom and Sarah will feel about us getting married? Said Leslie as they drove back to Aunt Marie's. Do you doubt that they will be happy? William was surprised. Mama's been wanting me to get married for a long time. She and Sarah will be very happy. Not everyone wants a daughter-in-law with someone else's child, Leslie blurted out. Alien? Everybody loves that baby, and you're talking strangers. After all, at the birth center they gave her to me as a father, so I am her father, said William. Leslie looked out the window and couldn't believe her happiness. She thought about the fact that if she had not been abandoned by John, she would have probably avoided that puddle, and Aunt Maria would have just passed by, and then she and Costia would never have met. And if she hadn't agreed to buy that studio in the suburbs, there would have been no second meeting with Aunt Maria. Now it was even scary for her to imagine that these people might not have appeared in her life. When they walked into the house, Aunt Maria and Uncle Steve and Sarah and Cotty were eating lunch. William was holding a cradle with a sleeping Barbara in one arm and with the other arm around Leslie's waist. Hello, folks, he said, and Tanya and I are getting married. Aunt Maria choked on her soup, and everyone else put their spoons aside and stared at them. Who tells people such news when they're eating? Aunt Maria asked, coughing. I'm sorry, Ma. I didn't think I'd shock you like that, William said. Congratulations, Sarah said, and a smile appeared on her face. Me too, Uncle Steve joined her. Aunt Maria got up from her chair and left the table. Finally, she said and gave William and Leslie a peck on the cheek. I've been waiting and waiting for you to get ripe. What do you mean waiting? Leslie was surprised. I promised that I would find you a good fiancé, and I don't know anyone better than my son. And in general, I realized a long time ago that you will make a wonderful couple. And now I will legally become Aunt Barbara's grandmother. Aunt Maria looked at the sleeping child and smiled. Leslie listened to Aunt Maria with her mouth open, and William laughed a little and shook his head. Mama, you killed a lot of birds at once, he said. Yeah, Mom is a strategist and not blind. Now put Mariashka in her crib and have dinner before it gets cold, said Aunt Maria. I'm shocked, said Leslie when they came into the room. And you were afraid that someone might be unhappy, answered William, carefully taking Barbara out of the cradle. And I'm not surprised at all. She's my mom, and you can expect anything from her. You have a wonderful mother, and I adore her, said Leslie. William put Barbara in the crib and walked over to Leslie, immediately wrapping her in his arms. And I adore her. And you and Barbara, he said and kissed Leslie on the lips. Leslie could not explain it, but with every cell of her soul, she felt that William was her man and thanked fate for the fact that she had united them, for giving her this happiness to love and be loved, for a beautiful and healthy daughter, and for Aunt Maria. After all, such a wonderful mother-in-law is still to be found.